That's okay. Okay. Any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Mayor's remarks. On April 6, CAO Manoj Dalwaria, Economic Development Manager Marco Marino, Regional Councillor Whalen, Councillor Neal, and I attended the April Lunch and Learn hosted by the Niagara Board of Trade and Commerce at Club Capri. Linda Sicoli, Niagara Region Economic Development Officer, was the guest speaker, with Marco Marino also providing some insight from the City of Thorold perspective. Marco works closely with economic development at the region, which ultimately benefits both parties, the region and the City of Thorold. On Tuesday, April 12th, Councillors Neal, Sentence, and I attended the virtual One Thorold meeting. The meeting was well attended, and this group continues to make progress on a number of important community issues. Updates were given from their subcommittees, which include affordable housing, neighborhood hubs, addictions, communications, as well as truth and reconciliation. On April 12th, I made a cameo appearance at the Thorold Garden Club, Thorold Horticultural Society, virtual planning meeting for the Year of the Garden 2022 event they plan on hosting. More details will be made available in the near future. There will be different award categories, and this event will likely kick off on National Garden Day, June 18th, with winners announced in September. Once again, more details will be made available in the near future. On Wednesday, April 13th, Councillor Neal and I attended the Housing Roundtable at the Black Sheep Lounge in Welland. Minister Anita Anand, MPs Vance Badaway and Chris Biddle hosted this housing discussion, which included housing initiatives in the recent federal budget, housing stock, affordable housing, housing affordability, purpose-built rental housing, homelessness, as well as other important areas of importance and concern. National Volunteer Week is April 24th to 28th. The theme in 2022 is volunteering is empathy in action, which affirms the strong connection between volunteerism and empathy. This profoundly human connection is at the heart of healthier individuals and stronger communities. This is the message I sent to the Distress Center Niagara. As Mayor of the City of Thorold, on behalf of City Council, I would like to extend a sincere thank you to all those who selflessly volunteer for Distress Center Niagara. Your work supporting the safety and emotional wellness of those in need throughout the Niagara region does not go unnoticed. We truly appreciate all you do. Wednesday, April 27th is Administrative Professionals Day. Thank you to all administrative staff for the many contributions you make daily. Our success is a reflection of your hard work, effort, and support. Once again, on behalf of City Council, we thank you. Wednesday, April 28th is the National Day of Mourning. The National Day of Mourning is dedicated to remembering those who have lost their lives or suffered injury or illness on the job due to a work-related tragedy. On April 28th, we will lower the flag at City Hall to half-mast to pause, reflect, and remember. On behalf of City of Thorold, Council, and staff, I would like to thank Thorold Fire and Emergency Services, Niagara Regional Police, EMS, and all emergency response crews who responded to the large structural fire that occurred on Beaver Dams Road on April 12th. Thank you for the leadership, courage, and the professionalism you displayed while working under tough conditions to extinguish the blaze and keep all those involved in our community safe. I stopped by the structure the next day to offer our support and spoke with Lynn family members. They were truly overwhelmed by the support of our community and City Council. Spring street sweeping. This year's spring street sweeping has begun and is currently underway. The city is divided into 7 sections for sweeping, each taking approximately 10 days to complete. Maps for each area can be found on the city's website and Facebook page. For more information, please visit thorold.ca. Port Robinson Ferry. The Port Robinson Ferry, Bridget, will begin operation beginning Saturday, May 7th. It'll run Saturday, May 7th and Sunday, May 8th from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. On Saturday, May 14th and Sunday, May 15th, also from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. The Port Robinson Ferry will open daily as of Saturday, May 21st till the end of season. May, June, July, and August, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. September and October, 9 a.m. to dusk. Congratulations to the under-21 Double B Thorold Blackhawks rep team for bringing home the Red Hats OMHA Championship. This championship weekend was played in Whitby from April 8th to 10th, and they defeated Riverside 4-1 in the final to take home the championship. Congratulations to the players, parents, and coaching staff for this outstanding achievement. I was honored when head coach and City of Thorold employee Corey Youngblood asked me to address the team prior to the championship game via FaceTime. That's the first time I've used that app. It was really quite interesting. On Friday, April 15th, I attended the One Church Thorold Good Friday service at McMillan Park at 11 a.m. It was great to see our local churches working together to improve our community. On Saturday, April 16th, I stopped by all three Easter egg hunts that were held in the city and dropped off some chocolate treats as a token of our thanks on behalf of the City of Thorold and City Council. The Thorold Community Theater is excited to announce the performance of Norm Foster's Self-Help. This comedy will mark the return of live performances in Community Hall of Trinity United Church and run for 3 weekends beginning this Friday, April 22nd, until Saturday, May 7th. Tickets are an outstanding value at $15 each. For more information and to purchase tickets, please visit their website at thoroldtheatre.ca. Friday, April 22nd is Earth Day, an annual event to demonstrate support for environmental protection, which was first held on April 22, 1970. The official theme for 2022 is Invest in Our Planet. As part of the Rotary Great Lakes Watershed Cleanup, the Rotary Club of St. Catharines South and Friends are hosting a cleanup from Lock 7 Viewing Center to Glendale Avenue this Saturday, April 23rd, from 9 a.m. until noon. The starting point meeting place is Lock 7 Viewing Center. To register or for further information, please go to rotarysouth.ca. That's rotarysouth.ca. In closing, as COVID-19 community infections continue to rise, please continue to follow all public health safety measures. This remains extremely important. And that's the end of my mayor's remarks. And now we'll move on to public meetings. Public meetings. Up first, Artisan Ridge Phase 3A Bylaw Amendment Application D1401-2022. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, as amended, respecting Artisan Ridge Phase 3A Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application. The Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application proposes to amend Zoning Bylaw 2140-97 and Zoning Bylaw 60-2019 to reduce the rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 6.5 meters for lots 1 to 15 and 26 to 28, as well as an amendment to increase lot coverage from 45% to 47% for lots 2 to 6. No additional units are proposed as a result of this amendment. Council will receive and consider all comments received at the public meeting. No decision on the applications is being made this evening. Up first, presentation from applicant's planning consultant. I'd like to call on Stephen Bedford, Planning and Development Manager, Land X Developments, for the applicant's presentation. Stephen, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council and staff. this application to amend, for a minor amendment to several lots within the subdivision is being processed to deal with a subdivision that has approximately 29, what has approval of 29 lots. Could you put this slide, our presentation up, please? Thank you. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So could you go to the next slide, please? The one before that. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Artisan Ridge, as you're aware, has been moving forward with the, in conjunction with the approval of the city of Thorold since about 2006 when the land was purchased. This was a large brownfield site, and as you can see on this plan, to the east, to the right, phase 1 has been constructed and is in place. Phase 3A is the area outlined in red. Between phase 1 and 3A is our vacant lands that have been draft approved, and we're working through the conditions and expect construction to begin this year. I know the subdivision that we're speaking about tonight is outlined in red, and to the left, involving the tailing ponds from the chemical plant. That subdivision will be coming forward hopefully in the next 12 months. We're working with staff at the region and the city to move that application forward. But tonight we're dealing with phase 3A, the subdivision in red. If we could look at the next slide, please. This is the subdivision 3A. You can see 29 lots, 29 single detached dwellings. It also includes block 31, which is an extension of the existing park, which was created as part of the initial phase. The items in the lots outlined in red, we're requesting that the rear yard be reduced by 1 meter from 7.5 meters to 6.5 meters. And the lots in blue, we're asking that the lot coverage be increased from 45% to 47%. These lots, the majority of the lots back onto the park. And as a result, we feel that the change in the rear yard and the coverage should not impact any adjacent properties as the lands back onto the park. And similarly on the west side, lots 26, 27, and 28 back onto future development. And we are the future development. So we will be relating the future development to the issues, to the reduction in the rear yard as we're requesting tonight. The reason we're requesting the changes is when our builder reviewed all of the lots, they couldn't provide the same variety of lots of building units as they have in phase 1, and they would like that opportunity to give the market the opportunity to have more flexibility in units, and that's why we're requesting this minor change to the bylaw. That's really my presentation this evening, and I'm quite happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Stephen, and I'll open the floor up for any questions. Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
Stephen, I know you said that all the lots are going to back onto other lots of yours. Will it have any effect on the building lot for the Thorold Nonprofit Housing Corporation?
Thank you, Councillor. No, it won't. The nonprofit apartment building that was initially part of our property is to the south of this subdivision.
Any further questions, Councillor Kenny? Okay, you're good? Councillor Longo, go ahead. And then Councillor Wilson will be next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Bedford. Mr. Bedford, I believe you were at council a few months, maybe a year back. And at that time, we had asked whether you were aware of our lot coverage and setback rules, and you said you were more than aware. We do have issues with other developments, and this council has kind of been cautious with allowing this. Is this really necessary, or is it just because we want bigger houses on smaller lots?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't put the position that way. There are a variety of lots within there are a variety of house dwelling unit designs in phase 1, which the builder would like to introduce into phase 2. And these lots, the lots that we're asking for the variances, the amendment on, need these minor amendments in order to provide that flexibility. We're really not changing the structure of the whole subdivision. It's just that these the builder would like more flexibility with his unit designs.
Okay, thank you. But one more question, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
go
through you
ahead.
to the presenter. But the builder was aware at the onset of what the limitations were and the conditions were for each lot, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Stephen. Stephen, you mentioned that some of these lots back onto your future development. So how is this going to impact the rear yards of those houses? Would you then be asking for us to reduce the lot coverage as well, or increase lot coverage, sorry?
Thank you for that question. In fact, the next subdivision is going to have quite a different structure than what has been proposed, what has been previously approved. We've been working with staff to increase the density of that area as it is between this single detached area and the chemical plant. So we believe, based on our initial designs, that in fact there will be significant setbacks between the rear yard of these 4 houses that we're talking about and the development that will be coming before you in the future.
Okay, so forgive me for my ignorance when it comes to planning, but would you not just be able, since it's empty land on the other side, just to extend the lots more, or is each lot written in stone already from your initial plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the plan of subdivision has already been approved and the zoning is in place. So we're basically working with the plan of subdivision that we have. Any flexibility is on the property to the west, which we will be, as I mentioned, will be planning with the knowledge that with the knowledge of the zoning that's in place on 3A.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further questions for Stephen? I've got Councillor DeRose. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Stephen, I heard your rationale for asking for the zoning amendment. Can I just take an educated guess that it's more profit-driven than what was stated?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know that, but we have the lots, there's 29 lots, and we have a variety of unit designs which you can see in phase one. And really it's being able to put the total array of unit designs on that lot, on those lots. So respect to price point and profit, I don't think it impacts that. It impacts the ability of the consumer to choose different house designs.
Thank you. I think in a roundabout way, you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. I seen Councillor Hanley had his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Stephen, is this like a precursor or prelude to what we're expecting on your west development? You're asking for this, and I'm getting the assumption. So if you ask for this, you're not going to come when you do your west development after you've gone through the whole process and asked for amendment to that so that you can further develop that or intensify it more?
The lands to the west will be before you for a zoning bylaw amendment and a variety of Planning Act applications in the future. And those lands are being developed, and they will in fact be quite different in layout than what you're dealing with today. We're proposing medium density housing in this location so that it provides, it responds to the town needs for housing that might be more affordable, and also provides an interface between this single detached area and the chemical plant to the west. It will provide a transition from the singles to these additional townhouse medium density units.
So can I, through you, Ms. Mayor, so you're saying that you might be building affordable housing and not student housing, just to be clear, or whoever, I know we can't really say who rents and who can't rent, but is the goal to keep it as it is now? I see that there's a lot of families there. That's one area I haven't heard a lot of complaints about as a counselor as for student activity, and it seems to be a family-oriented neighborhood. Is that your intention to keep it that way?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
you,
you,
Stephen.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further questions for Stephen? Seeing none, thank you, Stephen, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And now I'll move on to a presentation from city staff. I'll call on Mallory Smith, Intermediate Planner, for a presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Welcome, Mallory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council, members of the public. My name is Mallory Smith, Intermediate Planner with the City of Thorold. I'll be presenting the zoning bylaw amendment application received by the Planning Division. The application is for a zoning bylaw amendment for Phase 3A of the Artisan Ridge Subdivision. The lands that are the subject of the application are located in the northwest corner of Beaver Dams Road and Baker Street, adjacent to Phase 1 of the Artisan Ridge Subdivision to the east and Phase 2 of the subdivision to the north. The parcel highlighted in the image on the left comprises the subject lands known as Artisan Ridge 3A. The lands subject to the application are in the eastern portion of the highlighted parcel. This slide outlines the details of the amendments required for the development. The zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to reduce the required rear yard setback for lots 1 to 15 and 26 to 28 from 7.5 meters to 6.5 meters, and increase the maximum lot coverage permitted from 45% to 47% for lots 2 to 6. The site previously obtained a zoning bylaw amendment through application D1404-2021. This amendment will further amend site-specific lots as shown in the table. Staff have not received any comments from members of the public on the application. The list on the right indicates the comments that have come in so far from commenting agencies. If you have any questions or are looking for additional information on the application, please feel free to contact me via the number shown, or the link on the screen also takes you to our webpage where all the application materials are publicly available.
Thank you, Mallory, and I'll open the floor for questions to Mallory. Are there any questions for Mallory? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mallory. Mallory, just in the previous discussion with Stephanie, had mentioned about a future development and staff's already working on it as far as the west of the area where the current amendment's being asked for. What would that do, or how would that affect the current application before staff on the west if council say was to turn down their request for an amendment? I only ask that because it makes it interesting that they have yet to get the amendment that's before us as council, if I could elaborate. And now I'm told that they're already in the process of doing the paperwork for a west subdivision, almost on the assumption that they may get it. But if they didn't, how that would affect the work staff already did on the current west subdivision without prior approval?
Thank you. Do you mean the other side of the
going towards the chemical plant? He mentioned that they had already been before staff in regards to the development to the west going towards the chemical plant, and it would be medium density. So, and he said that they're already in the process with the city. So obviously they've already applied for an application, because he just mentioned that they would be asking for amendments there. So I'm wanting to know, like, if we as this council turn down their current request, how would that affect the work that the staff's already done on the request that he's mentioned is already in the process, but without us, even as a council, approving this amendment?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it would really affect if the lot coverage and rear yard setback weren't approved. I think that would really just affect the type of units that they were proposing to build there. And then when we were looking at the lands to the west, that could also be addressed through site plan. We would be looking at that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So if I could just follow up. So basically what it would do is we mean lesser of a building envelope if we didn't accept the amendments?
Yes, for these lots.
Thank you.
Anyone
No more
else?
questions, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone? Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Mallory, for your presentation. And now, at this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the applications received? Do we have anyone? There is no one. I'll repeat it one more time. At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the applications received? And we have no one registered. Okay, so I'm going to move to closing remarks. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, pursuant to Section 34. Council will consider staff's recommendation report at a future meeting date. If anyone wishes to receive notice of Council's decision, please provide your contact information and indicate so to the City Clerk at clerk@thorold.ca. That's clerk@thorold.ca. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. Okay, now we're going to move on to 7B, our next public meeting regarding 13 St. David's Street West, proposed zoning bylaw amendment application D1402-2022. I'll call to order the public meeting being held in pursuant to the provisions of Section 4 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, as amended, respecting 13 St. David Street West. The city has received a zoning bylaw amendment application for the subject property to facilitate the development of a 3-story mixed-use building on the subject property with commercial uses on the first floor and 6 apartment dwellings on the second and third floors. Council will receive and consider all comments received at the public meeting. No decision on the applications is being made this evening. If council makes a decision under the aforementioned section of the Planning Act, appeal rights may be available to certain persons or public bodies, depending on council's decision. Further information on appeal rights can be obtained by contacting city planning staffs before council makes a decision on the application. Up first, a presentation from applicant's planning consultant. I'll call on Susan Smythe, urban planner, Quartec Group, for the presentation respecting proposed zoning bylaw amendment for mixed-use commercial and residential building, 13 St. David Street West. Go ahead, Susan. Welcome, and go ahead for your presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council and committee, and members of the public in attendance. Thank you. My name is Susan Smythe. I am a senior planner with Quartec Group, and our firm was retained to assist the owner, Mr. Michael Saperoto, with this application for zoning bylaw amendment for the proposed mixed-use development. I'm here tonight to provide a brief presentation that includes background information and description of the site, the proposed development, the requested amendments, the planning analysis that concludes the proposal and how it meets the intent of the provincial, regional, local policies for an appropriate infill and proper intensification of an underutilized piece of land in the urban boundary limits of the city. Please note that I will also be available at the end of this presentation to answer any questions that you may have. Can you please go to the background information slide, please? Thank you. So to begin and offer some context, the site is located on the south side of St. David Street and west of Front Street North. The site is currently an undeveloped piece of property, and it has a slope along the eastern edge and contains scattered trees and vegetation throughout the site as depicted on the aerial photography. The site is approximately 1,236 square meters, roughly 0.12 hectares, with 26.73 meters of lot frontage. Surrounded by the site is mostly residential, consisting of a range of single 2-story dwellings, small-scale apartment buildings further west along St. David Street, as well as apartment building and townhouses on Pine Street North. To the south is commercial, and to the east is the industrial use, which is the Mike's Auto Repair Shop, who is the same owner as this site. To the north is the Kiefer Mansion, Maplehurst, which is a Part 5 designated site in the city. The site is a significant landmark and located on the highest elevation, and it is the most important residence that is connected to the development of the Welland Canal, which was built in 1885. Included with the application for this amendment was the requirement for a heritage impact assessment that examined the potential impact of the proposed mixed use to that of the Kiefer Mansion across the street. The report concluded that the proposed design of the building should not detract from the cultural heritage value of the Kiefer Mansion and to utilize materials that are consistent with the area, such as using brick and stone. Further, that if any construction activities are proposed, that it would that potentially could create vibration impacts, vibration monitoring shall be considered to ensure that the construction does not have any impact on adjacent heritage properties or that of any adjacent properties. In addition to the heritage report, there were several other technical studies to provide the necessary details and information that can support this mixed-use development. These include the preliminary site servicing requirements, like the water and sanitary capacity, and stormwater management details to ensure that there is enough capacity to accommodate the additional units and commercial use, and to determine where the stormwater runoff will go to avoid impacts to any adjacent properties. A phase 1, phase 2 environmental site assessment was also completed to ensure that the soils are not contaminated and can allow for the residential use. The planning justification analysis was also completed to confirm that the development is consistent with policies for this type of infill development and is compatible with the urban character. A land use compatibility study was also prepared, and it considered the site, considering its location from the former waste site, and to ensure that there is no impacts for redevelopment. All of these studies have been provided with this application and is available for public review upon request to the city planner. Next slide, please. For clarification, and please note that the public notice that was issued by the city indicated that the proposal was for a 2-story building. However, as noted earlier, it is for a 3-story building. So due to the awkward shape of the site, the following building footprint was designed to accommodate the 3-story building height, which will have a commercial retail type office space on the ground floor. It will also include mechanical, garbage, bicycle storage, mail, and the lobby space for the apartments above. The 6 apartment units will have 3 units per floor. Each floor will have a 2-bedroom unit. It will range between 78 to 80 square meters, so approximately 847, 869 square feet, and a 1-bedroom unit, 58 square meters, or roughly 630 square feet in size. There will also be 1 dedicated loading space for the commercial use at the rear, but it also can be used for the residents to move in and out of the building. There are 5 parking spaces plus 1 accessible dedicated space for the apartment units, of which has not been changed from the original site-specific zoning OR 0.5 provision, excuse me. The parking spaces dedicated for the commercial uses will be located immediately east of this site, located at 11 St. David Street, through an easement. This was a site-specific provision under the original OR-5 zone provision. However, in this proposal, there will be an increase for the required number of spaces from 6 to 10 commercial spaces. Lastly, this proposal will require a road widening across the entire frontage, and this has been integrated into the proposal. Next slide, please. Here are some perspective renderings of the building that illustrates the front view to St. David Street with glass panels for the commercial space on the ground floor, which is an architectural detail and is inviting to those pedestrians and the public view along St. David's. You can also see that there are balconies for the above apartment units, which are positioned facing north, so St. David Street, and south, which is in the back facing the commercial book depot. To the east is the industrial use, which is the auto repair shop. And that is not, because of the use being industrial, noises and the potential for generating some unseen views, the balconies therefore was reoriented to face St. David Street. And then to the west, there is an existing dwelling, and to avoid any privacy for their rear yard amenity space, the balcony is therefore repositioned facing the south to the commercial space. The building materials proposed are stone and brick as recommended by the Heritage Impact Assessment. As such, that it won't detract from the Kiefer Mansion. The site will also provide for pedestrian connections with a sidewalk to St. David Street, as well as leading to the rear of the building and east with stairs leading to the commercial parking area. It will not be until the site plan approval stage, which is the subsequent development stage, that these details will be confirmed in consultation again with the city and regional staff to ensure that building built form principles are integrated into the final design. Next slide, please. So the site currently has a site-specific zone, as I indicated, OR-5, which is office residential, under the city's comprehensive zoning bylaw 2197. which is still in effect and requires an amendment for this proposal. The OR provisions that applies currently to the site include A, that all residential shall be located above the commercial use, which there is no change that is being required, that is being provided. Although that instead of 3 units, there are 6 units. B, that access to commercial units shall be from the 11 St. David Street West, which is the abutting property. Originally, at the time of you approving the OR-5 amending bylaw, the development was a consolidation of these 2 sites, and the main entrance was intended to be off of 11 St. David Street. However, these sites are to remain separate, and therefore the amendment is required for the main access to be from 13 St. David Street. C, the maximum number of dwellings originally was to be 3. So again, given now with more recent statistical information on the region and city's demand for more housing, the site can feasibly add 3 additional units to help with the growing need for housing in the city, and therefore the amendment is to permit the additional 3 units, totaling 6 dwelling units. D, the number of parking spaces, residential only 5, that is being maintained, although there was enough space to allow for 1 extra space for accessible space, for the accessible space. The maneuvering aisle is 14 meters. Given the orientation and skew in the site, the 14 meters is not possible for the entire stretch because it does taper and gets narrow as you move south. Therefore, the minimum 2-way traffic and emergency access is 6 meters, and therefore that is what the amendment is for, to maintain a 6-meter maneuvering aisle through the development. With respect to the minimum number of parking spaces of off-site commercial, originally it was for 6. This proposal is allowing or requesting for a minimum of 10 spaces, which will allow an offset for any potential parking along adjacent streets. The minimum lot area, and again, the original was that there was the development of the consolidation of the 2 sites. Now that they are being considered separate, the minimum lot area is 0.12 hectares, therefore only includes 13 St. David Street. Minimum lot frontage, same thing. It was for the combined 40 of the 2 lots being 42 meters. In this circumstance, it's only for the lot frontage of 13 St. David's being 26.73 meters. The minimum floor area, there is no change to this building footprint, and therefore the proposal allows for a spacious ground floor commercial space in addition to the above apartment units. So to better distribute the mixed use function, the site, through the analysis, we wanted to be sure that we had enough space to allocate for both the residential, which is obviously in high demand. The interior side yard setback of 0.3 meters, there is no change to that. With this proposal, we were able to maintain that setback. Upon the review of the site characteristics and proximity to the surrounding areas, however, it was requested to provide for an additional provision for maximum building height of 10 meters. This is to maintain compatibility and a building's design that will complement the surrounding area and the dwelling units. The city approved a new zoning bylaw, 60-2019, and this site was rezoned to R3C, which permits townhouse units. Although the residential section of the bylaw is under an appeal, and therefore this bylaw is not in effect yet. Upon the city's thorough review and understanding of the intent and desire for mixed use development on this site, the R3 zone does not permit the commercial and residential combined uses. Therefore, this application will amend the intended residential use or zone, of R3C to downtown commercial mixed use C2 zone with site specific regulations to implement this development. Next slide, please. So the proposed development is subject to a thorough analysis against policies of provincial, regional, and city official plan for intensification and efficient use of land and municipal services within an urban settlement area. I indicated earlier that the region and city is in high demand for housing, particularly for housing options, such as apartment units to suit the needs of different lifestyles and a form of affordability. This site has been maximized to its fullest potential, leaving sufficient space for buffering and landscaping between adjacent uses. It provides for parking at the rear away from the public view, providing interior space dedicated for garbage, bike storage, mechanical, and other amenities for the tenants of the building. It also provides for access for vehicles and pedestrian walkways to the front of the building, to the street, and to the parking area off-site. The building has been designed to complement the historical and character of the area by using brick and stone. Front porches, balconies have been provided into the design to minimize impacts to adjacent uses and privacy concerns. And the development has been assessed and can efficiently be utilized with the available municipal services for the proposed uses. Next slide, please. So this slide just provides the intent, the next steps in the process for this development. So following this meeting and addressing any issues and comments from council and members of the public this evening, the planning staff will host another public meeting and or provide any additional information with the understanding that it's a 3-story building. They will also prepare a recommendation report and present the draft bylaw for review and approval by council. Pending approval in a 20-day appeal period, the owner will then be able to proceed with the site plan application and continue to work on the technical details of the site and architectural design of the building and floor plans with the city and the region. The site application will then be subject to further review, and when the technical comments are addressed to the satisfactory of the agencies, an agreement will be registered on title, at which point the owner can then move towards posting and providing securities and moving towards building permit drawings for construction. So this does conclude my presentation. I am available to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And now I'll open the floor for questions for Susan. Go ahead, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question through you to Susan. Susan, you mentioned in the proposed development, the bottom note mentions regional road widening. Is that a regional responsibility there, or would it be a city one? I only ask that because I believe that's a city-owned road.
So through you to Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correction. It is a city requirement for the road widening, not a regional. My apologies.
And that would come at the expense of the city then, right?
No, through you to Mr. Mayor. So the expense would be on the developer to prepare the required reference plan and dedication to the city.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Sentence, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, thank you for the presentation. Just one question on the minimum off-site commercial parking spaces from 6 to 10. Just for clarity, do you mean you'll have that space at the site itself, or you'll be utilizing space at the garage itself?
Through you to Mr. Mayor. So yes, those 10 additional spaces will be located off-site onto 11 St. David. It would be subject to an easement just to allow for that row of parking along that side. So it would be buffering between 13 and 11. So there'll be a row of, I don't know if we have the site plan available. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But there will be a row of parking spaces immediately abutting between 11 and 13 St. David's.
Oh, okay, so not on the street, that's all.
Not on the street, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, just a quick question, Susan. The stability of the land there, there's always been an issue with it. Do you have any issues with putting that building there with the land the way it is?
Through you to Mr. Mayor. Yes, there will be a geotechnical study and a slope stability analysis that will be conducted at the time of site plan to confirm that the proposed development is viable. Based on the architect's preliminary review, it will be likely the foundation of the building will be reinforced and acting as a retaining wall and a structural reinforcement. But further studies will be required through the site plan phase.
So any work done next door at the garage, whatever impact it might be concerning, you'll address it.
Through you to Mr. Mayor, for clarification, if there's changes to the auto repair shop, if it will have an impact on this proposed development or the other way around?
No, it will have an impact on this development.
So through you, further, any changes to the auto repair shop will have to be cognizant of this future development as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, maybe I didn't understand it, but I thought did it say on the slide that you were gonna have 5 parking spots for the apartments and 10 for the commercial use?
Through you to Mr. Mayor, that is correct. There's going to be 5 residential, 1 per unit and 1 accessible parking. So 6 on site at 13 St. David. And then the 10 will be dedicated to the commercial use on 11 St. David.
Well, so you need 8 spaces and you're asking to let this go with 6, is that correct? You need 1.25, so you need 8.
So
But you're asking to pass this with only 6 parking spots for the residents?
through to you, Mr. Mayor. So as per the zoning bylaw for mixed use, because there's a commercial and residential component, it was 1 per unit. So that is what was being provided is.
I'm talking about the residential.
Yes, correct. So the residential, so if it's a mixed use type of development, it's 1 per residential unit, which is 6, which is what is being provided. And then the balance is the commercial, which is off-site.
So you're saying there's gonna be 5 parking spots with 1 being for a handicap? Is that what you're saying?
So there's 6 in total parking spaces, with 1 being dedicated for accessible. There may be an opportunity, and we will revisit this, to likely extend the length of the parking. We have to determine if it may impact the buffering that we were proposing, the landscape strip between the property to the south and the edge of the parking. So we will revisit that to see if there's an opportunity. Then therefore we'll provide 6 parking and 1 dedicated for accessible. But all commercial spaces will be located on 11 St. David.
Like, I guess I'll leave that to our planners, but I have a bit of a problem with this. Like if the garage and the apartment was ever severed, and we end up with a commercial shop downstairs with 6 units, and we only have 6 parking spots over there. Like I say, if it was severed down the road, I guess I'll talk to the planning about that later. Okay, thank you.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, the properties are already separate parcels. There will be no consolidation of the sites, so they will be acting independent. The commercial parking, however, would be subject to an easement, and that would be registered on title for 11 St. David. So if the auto shop was ever to change, for instance, there would be the easement on that title that would essentially state that the 10 parking spaces are dedicated to the 13 St. David commercial use.
But how does that address the 8 parking spots that we need for the residential portion of it?
For clarity again, the mixed use only permits 1 per dwelling unit. So
Okay.
there's only 6 units, and that's what's being provided.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. Councillor Kenny has asked quite a few of my questions, but the building for residential, will it be a condominium or apartment building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, that has not been yet confirmed. That is something that I'll have to confirm with the owner. If it is condominium, that application will be brought forward for further review and approval by council.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, you mentioned that the original proposal that the neighbors were aware of was a 2-story building, but it's been changed to 3. When were they provided notice that it was changed to 3 stories?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so.
I can actually
Oh,
speak
yeah.
to that, Susan, through you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to address that, Councillor Longo, in my presentation. So there was an error on the notice sign and on the notice that went out to the residents in the area. So to rectify it, we're already working on it with the applicant to get that notice sign updated, and we will send out an additional mail out and allow for an additional public meeting before council makes a decision on this, so that if there was any additional concerns with the height, that someone would still have the opportunity to speak to that.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, should I wait until council makes their staff makes their presentation to address that, or should I ask the question now?
Well, regarding that, I would wait till Paul makes his.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask, thank you very much. I'll just ask staff the rest of my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Susan. Susan, I don't know if this is the appropriate question for you, but I too was worried about the commercial spaces being on the neighboring property. So I do understand it's an easement and it's registered to title. And maybe you can't answer this question, but what if the person that purchases that, if Mike's Auto Shop were to sell, do they have the ability to get rid of an easement? I'm just wondering if it's set in stone, because I have the same concern Councillor Kenny has.
Through you, Mr.
Yep,
Mayor.
yeah.
So just if we go back to the original application that was approved, OR-5, the arrangement was the same. So they provided for the commercial spaces to be off-site. And in this proposal, we're actually requesting that there's an increase for the commercial spaces. Now, is there an opportunity if a future purchaser can take off that easement requirement? That is something that I'd have to request a legal opinion on. I'm not too sure about that.
Okay, perfect. And then the 1 unit per residential unit, or sorry, 1 parking space per residential unit. So there's 6 units, 6 parking spaces, but 1 is designated accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have an accessible person living there, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's really only 5 per unit.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And as I indicated, we are going to revisit the site to see if there's an opportunity to provide 1 additional parking stall. It just may have a potential impact on what we were hoping to be as an additional landscape buffer. So I guess we'll have to offset and do a compromise if the issues arise where it should be a dedicated one space per unit, so that being 6 dedicated plus an additional accessible space, then we'll make that change to the site plan.
Yeah, I guess what worries me about that is that really we're being asked then to make a compromise. So you should have a buffer between the properties or green space that's required, unless I'm hearing this wrong. So you're proposing 5. To me, I see this as a reduction in parking spaces per unit. And then if we want 6, we have to then reduce the amount of green space or buffering between properties. So unless I'm wrong, is that correct in what I'm saying?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something that we'll have to investigate a little bit further. I'm not sure what the reduction would be or how much of a compromise it would be. I'll have to look at that a little bit further because it's not just a parking stall. It's essentially extending when you're coming out of a stall, you have to have a minimum of a 3 meter so that your car can kind of back into a roadway space, if you will, before it can to leave the property. So again, that's something that my team will have to look into a little bit further.
Okay, and my last question is I don't remember what it was called, but there was a change from the required 14 meters to 6 meters, and I think it was a laneway, maybe like emergency laneway. I wasn't sure what you were talking about in that.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, what that is, it's the entire width coming from St. David's into the entire property. So originally, the 14 meters was I guess the entire asphalt width of the roadway. But because the building footprint has been extended a little bit more due to the constraints, the aisle width is now, the maneuvering aisle is now 6 meters, which is something that is okay in terms of an emergency, so for fire trucks to get in and also for any ambulances to get in, and then for the garbage trucks to come in and out of the site. So there is that availability for maneuvering into the site.
And that's what people would drive in and out of as well?
Yes.
Okay, so how many meters is required for one laneway?
I'd have to resort to Paul for the city requirements.
I'm just thinking when you're driving on the road, I feel like it would be more than 3 meters for one lane. I could be wrong, but.
Yeah, through you to Mr. Mayor, it could be a little more than 3 meters, but I will resort to Paul and his group to confirm what is the minimum two-way travel for the city.
You can ask Paul when he does his presentation, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'll ask him. I'm just very concerned about all of the changes. The 3 stories, it's 10 meters, and I believe in residential, my meeting with Paul in the last month, it's 11 meters in residential, and I don't think we can actually control the amount of levels. It's more the overall meterage, but I'm just concerned about all of the changes and compromises that we'd be making. I'm concerned about parking downtown, not enough being there for residentials. And I know you might consult, but what you're bringing forward right now, I don't feel is acceptable, and I don't feel comfortable going from 14 meters to 6. That's quite a substantial decrease. So I'll save the rest of my questions for Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I knew I had one more. Through you to the presenter. In your presentation here, there's an area that it speaks that this would address affordable housing options in the downtown area. How is this affordable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a different option in affordability is going from a single detached dwelling or a townhouse to an apartment type of style. It's the different type of unit that's being provided, a housing option. So in most circumstances, apartment units are typically less expensive than that of, say, a single detached lot.
Okay, thank you. So it doesn't, you're not connected in any way with Niagara Regional Housing or any other affordable housing provider?
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, no, that is not what the proposal is for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Susan, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And now I'll move on. Presentation from city staff. I'll call on Paul Claus, Senior Planner, for a presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Paul, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council, members of the public. Susan had quite a detailed presentation. I won't go too much into it, but I'll definitely try and answer some of council's questions. As I mentioned, it's a 3-story mixed-use building with 2 residential floors above a ground floor commercial use that's being proposed. And amendments to both bylaws are required. I just wanted to go, Susan went into detail about the site-specific provisions to amend the older bylaw that still applies to this site, but I thought I would run through the amendments, the site-specific amendments to the C2 zone, which is proposed under the new bylaw. So there's a few, I believe this captures everything. We're going to do obviously a comprehensive review and ensure that everything is accounted for. There's a building facade with minimum requirement. So the building facade has to span 80% of the lot width, the frontage, I should say. And they're proposing to reduce that for this proposal to allow for a driveway access. Parking, there is a reduction proposed under the new bylaw for the residential units. I believe it is, it's actually 1.5 spaces under our old bylaw for apartment dwellings that are less than 15 units. 15 units. So I will have to, get council some accurate information in that regard, because I don't want to have any confusion. And like I said, there will be another public meeting. So that's could be a good opportunity to clarify the parking and how it's being reduced through this application. The driveway width does require a variance from the bylaw. The minimum 2-way driveway access width requirement is 7 meters. So 6 meters is proposed based on the site plan that was in Susan's presentation, and it does taper off a little bit. So we might have to determine what the exact width is that's being requested, but there is a reduction proposed. And then a parking aisle is similar to the driveway. It's just abutting parking spaces. So there is a separate reduction required in that regard as well. And then there's a requirement to reduce the setback from the parking area to, I believe it's the west property line, which I guess it abuts the residential property to the west. So at the time that I submitted this presentation, there were no public comments. However, I did yesterday receive 2 emails from residents, one of which who I believe is registered to speak tonight. So staff will look at those public comments and address them in there in the recommendation report. And I did mention this before, but I'll allude to it again, that there was an error on the public notice, and staff is working to address that and make sure everyone in the area within the radius that we circulate is aware of that it's a 3-story building being proposed. And I'm available for any questions at this time.
Thank you, Paul. And now I'll open the floor for questions to Paul. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Claus. And You had mentioned there's going to be a second public meeting for this. Why is there a second one? I'm not quite sure I understand.
It's in regards to the error that I mentioned. I just want to ensure that anyone who might have seen the notice and thought, okay, it's just a 2-story building, I'm not interested in speaking, that they understand that it's actually a 3-story building being proposed, and that they have an opportunity to actually speak to council based on the correct information.
Okay, thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to the city clerk, wouldn't it be prudent to not have this meeting tonight? Like, I'm not sure why we're going to do this twice. Especially when the most important thing is the views and opinion of public. And it seems like there may be 1 or 2 here tonight, but the majority were thinking this was a 2-story structure going up. So I'm just thinking out loud here, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I could try and answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, Matthew. Yeah, I just, it was scheduled well in advance. So I think, we held it just because the mistake was realized late in the process, and to cancel it, I suppose we could have done that, but we're understanding the main points of the proposal. But yeah, like I said, the 3-story element is important. So we do have to make sure that the public is notified again. So I apologize for the redundancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the planner. Yeah, mistakes are made. That's not an issue. I just want to make sure we do this the right way. So I guess I'll hold my comments for the second meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question, because again, I think the presenter was sort of not telling us whether it would be an apartment building or a condo building. And from my perspective, it should not be a condo building. It should be an apartment building. We're going to be discussing affordable housing later on tonight. And Councillor Longo mentioned affordable housing earlier. And we're going to be looking at a number of other downtown affordable housing buildings being put. I hope it's affordable housing buildings being put up. And I am going to be discussing, when we do discuss the old arena, the affordable housing issue at that time. So I would hope that the presenters would definitely have it as an apartment building and as an affordable apartment building. And same with the parking. I mean, the parking is a big issue downtown, and the more parking we can put in, the better it will be. And if it's 1.25 or 1.5, whatever it should be is what it should be. So I'll reserve any more comments as Councillor Longo did for a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Councillor Kenny, go ahead.
Paul, does the same person own 11 and 13?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I believe the consultant clarified, and she can jump in if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say yes, they're both owned by the same property owner.
Okay, I guess my question to you would be then, why would they not sever a piece of land, sever a piece of that off from 11 to 13 and make the parking right?
So it technically would be an option. That's not what they've proposed, but we're certainly going to be revisiting parking in general, I think, and discussing it with the applicant. So, if this public meeting was useful for anything, I think it's just to get, council's opinion on the parking and note that it's something that needs to be discussed further. So I don't, have guidance to provide them to do that at this point, but we're going to look at the parking issue through our review.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Paul? Okay, seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just one last comment with regards to the parking. I think my concern as well is just that there isn't street parking on St. David's Road there. And I think you have to go a bit of a ways down Front Street to get parking on the street. So not only for the residents that are there, but if they have a visitor, where would the visitor park? I guess that would be my other concern. Because I believe, Paul, you said it's 1.5 where the presenter said 1 parking space per unit. Is that correct?
I believe so. And I'm going to take a look at this tomorrow and just make sure council has the correct information. I'll discuss it with the applicant too.
Okay, perfect. And so the driveway going in, like I was stating before, so you were saying it should be, or 7 meters is the minimum, and they're proposing 6?
For two-way traffic, yeah, 7 meters is the minimum. And yes,
So
I believe it's 6, but it does taper. So I'm not sure the exact, but whatever it is, we'll have to measure it from that site plan and ensure that that's captured in the amendment.
Okay, and so is that even something we're allowed to, if that is the minimum, that we can actually overrule and allow for a smaller access? I was just thinking about emergency crews, like if somebody was parked there, obviously illegally, you shouldn't be parking there, but we know people do it, right?
So you're asking through the mayor, Councillor Wilson, you're just asking if that's something that we can actually vary, or is it a safety concern?
Exactly.
Well, I know the minimum fire route requirements are to have a 6 meter access. So in terms of fire, it could be okay, but we'll definitely get the fire department's feedback and ensure that anything that's being done is safe, and before we contemplate reducing it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Paul. And at this time now, I'll move on to public participation. At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak? I thought that there was someone registered, but they're not there. Okay. Again, there's no one there. I'll ask again. At this time, is there anyone online who wishes to speak on the application received? And there is no one. Okay, closing remarks. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, pursuant to Section 34. Council will consider staff's recommendation report at a future meeting date. If anyone wishes to receive notice of council's decision, please provide your contact information and indicate so to the city clerk at clerk@thorold.ca. That's clerk@thorold.ca. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. Okay, we'll move on to motions for council support. And I'll call on Councillor Sentence for his motion respecting free parking during downtown cruise nights. And then do you have a seconder, Councillor?
Councillor Longo.
Councillor Longo, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion is that council requests the Director of Planning and Development Services to waive any parking meter fees in lot number 2 in Thorold on Friday evenings between May 6, 2022 and September 23, 2022. And second, that the fees be waived 30 minutes prior to the start of the event and end at 12 a.m. midnight. And 3, that signs be posted in the downtown area advising of the free parking in lot number 2. Thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion on that motion? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I just wanted to ask Councillor Sentence what the thought process was behind this. I know we want to attract things to our city, but at the same time, we have bills to pay, and we do part of that through parking fees. So I'm just wondering what the thought process is to waive it on those nights where we know we're actually going to have people come to the area.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wilson, I was talked to Jason Simpson, and we only monitor those or pay for those until 7 o'clock anyways. This is just to cover some time period for not just a car show, but the thought process when we had our BIA meeting was for restaurants and our downtown people who might be affected by the car show. They could park back there, park for free, customers or patrons at a restaurant, and then could come in there. And like I said, we only actually monitor it till 7. I'm just trying to cover the night. That's my thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to who the appropriate person may be answering. Do we address the concerns of the individual with the pizzeria on Front Street in regards to her concern was people that would be driving up to get their meals? Lot 2 is a lot further away to the rest of the business that was in question, Tony's Pizzeria, I believe. So did we address that? Because I know she brought some concerns forward and I didn't really see anything out there that how we addressed her, that she was satisfied with the address that was made to her.
I believe it's been addressed. I'll ask Councillor Sentence to respond to that.
Yeah, they amended their application for the special permit, so they're actually going to come up just past Cosmos, and it won't affect her business at all. So it has been, and the BIA said they talked to all the businesses as well. So everything has been addressed that would have affected her business in particular.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. No further discussion. I had a mover, Councillor Sentence, seconder, Councillor Longo. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to receive and file minutes or adopt recommendations of council, committees, and boards. Minutes to review for information purposes, Heritage, Thorold Lackac. Minutes from March 1st, 2022 meeting. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Delegations to report. 2022 community grants. Report PWCS 2022-28, agenda item 16B, Sebastian Socio Marandola regarding the Santa Claus parade, and I'll call on Sebastian for his presentation. And Sebastian, please note you have 10 minutes to speak, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Thorold Santa Claus Parade Committee. I would like to start by thanking Council for the motion that was passed on April 5th to increase the funding towards our insurance for this year's parade. Unfortunately, after much deliberation and professional advice, we still feel that this puts us in an uncomfortable and compromising position as volunteers. We are exposing ourselves to significant amounts of personal liability as volunteers by putting on the parade. Even with an increased insurance policy, there's still tremendous risk should an unforeseen incident occur. We are coming before you as volunteers looking for the support of the city to take on the management of this event, meaning that we as volunteers could operate as volunteers for the city of Thorold when acting with our capacity to put on the event. The Thorold Santa Claus Parade is a very significant event with many moving parts, as well as technical and compliance regulations that we as volunteers are not fully equipped to handle in an adequate manner that the municipality otherwise could. We've seen significant instability and a decline in volunteers over the past few years, not just for the parade, but in all areas. Coming to you today, we do have a large number of volunteers available to put on this parade, but without the peace of mind and liability coverage through the city, it very well could not be the case. There seems to be, I misspoke. There are significant challenges with volunteerism that I do want to stress, and I'm hoping that given any opportunity, the city will take a chance to help ease that peace of mind and create for more volunteers to be able to participate and want to participate without any overarching concerns. The stability created through making this a city event as most all municipalities do for their Santa Claus parade, will ensure the continued longevity of the parade for years to come and prevent instances of uncertainty that could happen with only volunteers at the helm, as we've seen in the past few years. So I'm coming to appeal to council for support.
Thank you, Sebastian. And now, any questions for Sebastian? Go ahead, Councillor Decker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sebastian, where would you have gotten the professional advice regarding the liability for the volunteers? I'm just asking because I've been talking to some of the people that from past Santa Claus parades, and this wasn't an issue back then prior to COVID. So just wondering why now there's this issue with the liability and whatnot. Can you provide some information regarding that?
Yep, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I have spoken to several insurance professionals regarding policies. As some of you may or may not know, when it comes to a parade, there are very limited insurers that will even extend the policy due to the liability being on a public street of a large magnitude of sorts. Now, the reason it hasn't been an issue in the past, I will chalk up to ignorance, even on our own part. Myself being a part of the committee the past 4 years, it was more of a lack of awareness towards what liability issues were carried rather than them not being an issue. It's being more informed and wanting to be protected.
So I'm pretty sure that the city's willing to maybe cover the insurance, and maybe Maria can speak to that. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, because the parade isn't that, or the Santa Claus parade isn't that far away. So I'm just wondering, I mean, we have the volunteers, if we can get the insurance to cover the event, would that, make it a go? Or are you saying, like, are you basically saying if the city doesn't chime in, we're not going to have the parade? I'm just curious.
It's putting us in a difficult spot. So even we've looked into expanding the insurance, even with the additional money, but even though we could create a higher degree of insurance, we still have a much larger liability perspective versus if this was run by the city, we as volunteers would be covered through the city as volunteers acting on their behalf. Now, we would have less individual coverage, but also a lower level of liability for us as volunteers. And there is a genuine outcry for concern about that kind of liability and just the thought of what undertaking would have to be done as private citizens not knowing or navigating this space should an unforeseen incident occur.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Decker?
Thank you.
Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I had the same questions through you. Thank you, Sebastian, for the presentation. I think every city should have a Santa Claus parade. It's a no-brainer. But if we cover the insurance, if that isn't enough and we needed more, I'm just confused. Does that not cover any problems that a volunteer would have or need if we increase the insurance?
So even if the insurance was increased, we're still considered a third party that isn't covered under the direct umbrella of the city's insurance rider.
So I guess in layman's terms, if something happened, if somebody fell off a float, they might not be covered. I know I'm simplifying it, but what is the fear, I guess?
So I guess the fear is, so your example of if somebody were to fall off a float, they would be seeking obviously damages through our insurance company. Now that whole policy is held personally by the members of the committee, and we would be left to deal with that incident without any external support or through the municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
I would like to ask our staff, namely Curtis, to bring the Santa Claus parade's 9 months away. Why don't we get a staff report from Curtis or whoever and bring it back to us? I mean, they operate a Santa Claus parade in Toronto. I mean, it can happen. Why can't we do it in Thorold? So instead of going back and forth, why don't we just get a report from Curtis, what we have to do to make this thing happen, and then we can vote on it. Can I make a motion to that effect?
Yes, you can, Counselor. Well, wait, let's finish the questions to Sebastian, and then we'll look after that, because there's other people that have questions. Okay? Go ahead, Counselor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess one of my main questions is, we have a number of parades around the region, one in Magna Lake, another in Pelham and Welland and St. Catharines, and that. Where are they under the umbrella of their particular communities, or are they on their own? The liability is on them, that specific committee that's looking after that specific parade. I think Councillor Kenny maybe has come up with an answer that we need to have over the next couple of weeks or so, and I believe that we can get all the information we need from both a insurance perspective and from what other communities, how they put on their parades, and that. So I think we need to. I think we need to put it on. There's no way that we should be putting this parade on. We have a group of people that have a concern, and we should make sure the concerns are addressed. And so that I believe that if we have staff take a look at it and bring back a report on all facets of putting on a parade, and it's not just a Christmas parade, maybe we're going to have a summer parade, who knows? But I believe that we need to take a look at this in a serious manner and come back to Sebastian and his committee to deal with this.
So, okay, we'll deal with the motion. Right now, we're dealing with questions to Sebastian. So if you have a question for Sebastian, that's what we're here for right now. Councillor Hanley, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that in regards to everybody's wanting a motion, I would want to put a defer motion on the floor.
You want to put what?
Defer it or refer it to, whatever way, and I haven't spoke on the matter yet. It's obvious that council isn't comfortable with what's being proceeding here, so.
Well, we're just dealing with this is just right now the presentation. We'll deal with that next, okay? And then we've had people that want a staff report. We'll deal with that, but right now we're dealing with questions to Sebastian. Do you have a question, Councillor DeRose?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sebastian, have you collaborated with any other communities to see what they're doing different? Because that's what I would, in our motion, I would ask our staff to do that. But have you talked to any other communities that could have shed some light on your concerns?
So I have not spoken directly with any of the other municipalities, but I have done some research and looked into how their parades are run, and it seems overwhelmingly that they're mainly organized by the municipality. They have groups of volunteers and committees, and sometimes they even have community partners and sponsors. I believe one of the most notable would be Niagara Falls, because they do a pretty significant parade, but they have a dedicated staff department for that, and I believe OPG partners with them, if I'm not mistaken.
So Sebastian, basically you're asking that staff take over the parade, basically.
In a way, but not to that extent. So I guess we as volunteers could still organize and do the large heavy lifting that we currently do, but there are many administrative and compliance areas that we aren't well versed enough in, and we may not even know to do properly for, I guess, our protection and the cities. And if it's run by the city, there is a more likely chance that these compliance rules are known and can be taken care of properly. It is out of the ordinary for volunteers to completely run a Santa Claus parade as a third-party group.
Okay, and can I just ask one more question?
Yes, go ahead.
You're not suggesting, are you suggesting to hire someone for this from outside of present staff?
I'm suggesting, I guess, the best recommendation, like it's been brought up, is a staff report for whatever means can be done to achieve this goal.
Okay, yeah, I'll support a staff report also. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further questions to Sebastian? Okay, seeing none. We're gonna move, can I have a motion to move PWCS 2022-28 community grants forward? I have a mover, Councillor Wilson. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Neal. Any discussion? All those in you want to discuss that, Councillor?
Yes, because that community grants, that involved other groups besides the Santa Claus Parade.
I know,
It wasn't just the Santa Claus Parade.
But that's where we deal with it, because that's what it falls under, so we,
I know, but I don't want to move, I don't want to, I want to discuss the community grants later in the meeting, that's what I'm saying, without the Santa Claus Parade.
no, we're gonna discuss the whole report now, and we'll deal with the Santa Claus Parade as well, because it's part of that report.
So you're going to take it out, is that what you're saying?
We're gonna deal with community grants. As part of that is the Santa Claus Parade, so then council can make what direction they want with the Santa Claus Parade. But it falls under that report, and we're moving that report forward. Okay? Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Did we get that? Okay. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor DeRose?
Yeah, I just wanted clarification, because I did want to speak about something with community grants also.
You'll be
later
able
this
to.
evening.
We're bringing the
Under,
report.
this-
We're bringing the report forward.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna bring the report forward. You'll be able to speak on anything in the report, and we'll deal with the Santa Claus Parade because it's part of that report. And if council wants a staff report on the Santa Claus Parade, that's where we'll deal with it. And then we'll deal with any other questions regarding any of the community grants. Okay?
So basically, Mr. Mayor, you're taking out discussion report then?
I'm moving discussion report forward.
B?
I'm moving discussion report PWCS 2022-28 community grants forward. Okay? So that is what.
So any questions we have will be asked at a future meeting, you're saying?
No. That's where we're gonna deal with this report. It's coming forward now. I'm gonna put it on the floor. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, so the community grants is on the floor. Because we've had a wholesome discussion on the Santa Claus Parade, do you want to deal with that line item first? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to refer that back to staff.
You're
so they can
talking
come
about,
back to us with information.
you're talking strictly about the Santa Claus Parade item, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we have a referral motion to refer that back to staff for a report. A referral motion's non-debatable, am I correct, to the clerk? So, do I need a seconder for that? Or I got mover, Councillor Longo, seconder, Councillor Sentence. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so that looks after the Santa Claus Parade. It's been referred back to staff. They're gonna bring back a wholesome report, answer our questions or concerns. If you have anything that you want addressed in that report, you can by all means send a note off to the clerk, and they'll make sure that that gets included. Now, the rest of the reports on the floor, okay? First of all, we'll have our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman, speak to that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor, the recommendation for the community grants report is one, that council approve the community grant funding as outlined in the report, and two, that council approve $13,250 carry forward from the encumbrance reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the report is on the floor, and it's open for discussion, so If you have anything you want to speak about or bring up, now's the time. And Jeff's here, and I think Curtis is here as well. And they're here to answer any questions or concerns that you have. Are there any questions or concerns regarding the report? Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Just a clarification on the runway of recognition. So the amount that is being put into the budget is $3,500?
Curtis or Jeff, whoever wants to handle that, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Jeff. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It's $3,000 in cash and then $500 in kind.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? I got one question. Is Maria on, our Director of Finance? Right?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Maria, could you, and that's not for this year, but I'm talking about like for future. Should items like our commitment to hospice and Pastone not be line items in the budget rather than community grants? Or can we do that in the future? That's my question.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, it's very similar to the LAC Act. They are separate line items in the budget, but they are contained within that community grant section of the budget.
But they're there, is that where they're accounted for, but they're really not
Correct.
community grants, like, per se?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Now we're going to move back to consent reports. Okay, so I have a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Decker, that if we take 15A through 15H together, or we can do them separately, or someone want to pull an item. I have Councillor Sentence that wants to pull an item. Give me the number, please.
Yeah, item CC 2022-32.
Okay. And do you want to pull, what do you want to pull on that?
Number 10, item number 10.
Okay.
Can I speak to it, or you want?
Not yet. We will. I'll give you. Councillor Longo, you had your hand up to pull an item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same report, CC 2022-32, council correspondence. I'm not sure of the number. Has to do with the Transit Commission Board.
Yeah, I
I'm
think.
not sure if that's the same one Councillor Sentence is pulling.
Is that the same one, composition of the?
Moving transit forward.
Yeah. That's the same one.
Same one, okay.
Councillor Neal.
Under 32, I would like to also move more homes for everyone plan, and I don't know the number on it, but it's more homes for everyone plan. I'd like to send that to the planning staff for review.
What number is that? Is that under the same report? Is that?
Yeah, it's under the list of on number 32. It's called More Homes for Everyone Plan from the province.
Okay, thank you. And it's, I seen Councillor DeRose with his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to just discuss D, F, and also G, and I'm looking at the last letter, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, more homes. I don't know if that's the one that Councillor Neal was referring to.
Yeah, it wasn't, but I'd like to add that into discussion.
Okay.
So those three for me, D, F, and G, the last letter.
And the H.
Wait, DF, what one? DFA, Councillor DeRose?
D, F, and G, which was already pulled. 32.
D, F, and G. Okay.
And I like to add H in there, number 33.
Okay. Well, let's, we'll go through them one by one then, quickly. And then when we'll stop at the one. So I got DF 2022-08, accounts payable March 22. I had a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2022-18, fourth quarter and annual drinking water quality monitoring, or DWQMS report. I had a mover again, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. C, nobody pulled C, so PWCS 2022-37, Streetlight General Maintenance Contract Tender Award. I mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, D, here's where we start. There was a question on D, PWCS 2022-39, Weeping Tile Disconnection Program Contract Award. Councillor DeRose, you pulled that. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I read through it several times. I just needed an explanation. I understand they're going to do it. There's only a limited amount in the budget for this. So instead of their $105,030 estimate to do this, we're going to work with them at $60,000. But here's my question. Does this mean that if someone has an issue, they reach out to the city, and the city, who they're contracting this out to, they'll be taking care of that expense for their own personal residents for any weeping tile issues or flooding issues? Am I reading that right, or is that, yeah, so I just need an explanation, that's all. I couldn't make sense of whether it's covered in that, whatever money that we're proposing through the budget, which it looks like it's 60,000, or is it just to help people that are having these issues with old houses, weepers, and the drainage?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll get our Director of Public Works and Community Services to give you some clarification, Councillor DeRose. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor DeRose, the program is designed to help those older homes that have older plumbing that require protection during extreme weather events. And it includes a program for putting in backflow valves, weeping tile disconnection, and sump pumps. And the process works through an application-based whereby our staff would inspect the situation and then make arrangements with our contractor to come in and complete the work to the property owner's satisfaction, and then we would pay the contractor directly.
So basically, it's a first come, first served, Jeff? Like whoever, once the money's gone, it's gone for that program?
Yes, ideally, we would have been able to afford a higher budget for this, but and sometimes we get, a handful of applications. Sometimes we get 30 or 40, depending on the weather situation that we experience. But if we need more money, we can come back and ask for more. But I think in this case, we've got a budget number, and we only have one contractor. So a negotiated arrangement with the contractor is probably the best way to go. And as I say, if we do have extreme weather events that could justify the need for additional funding for this program, we would come back to council and present that information.
And thank you, Jeff. And just one last question. So is this when an emergency arises, or can someone come to you and say, hey, my house is 100 years old, I've had some flooding in the basement, can you, like, does it have to be during an emergency, or can it be just someone trying to be proactive?
Well, I think the way the program, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor DeRose, the program works, anybody who wants to have the system in place. Some of the newer construction obviously has some of these facilities already built in because in many cases they're requirements of the building code. So it really only affects some of the older areas of the town, and some of them, where we have chronic problems, have already taken advantage of the situation. But as funds are available and people are interested, and it makes sense to go ahead with the extra protection, they would be eligible for the program.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Jeff, so we've done this previously in previous years?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay.
We've contracted it out usually on a 3-year contract.
Yeah, this
Was
is
most
this
of the money
program-
usually used up by the end of the year? I'm just curious, because I think it's a great initiative.
Mr. Mayor, again, I think it's
Maybe-
more hit and miss depending on the weather that we experience. But with global warming, we need to be more proactive and getting people and encourage them to take advantage of the program.
Yeah, and if I can make one suggestion, I would even look at it as one of the criteria is maybe need, you know, a lot of elderly people living in old houses. Senator, thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Hanley?
Yes, please. If I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jeff. I know in the future we were just targeting one specific area, that the only eligible recipients of this was in the Thorold South area. That's where the program was initiated previous. I know we spend a substantial amount of money there doing, to try to stop the inflow. So now this program is open for all residents of Thorold? Like I know we had previous problems in the Broderick Street area and other areas before we put in the CSO tanks.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Handley's right. I think the majority of the people that have taken advantage of the program were in the Thorold South area. But I think it's funded by revenues across the city. It should be available to anyone who's interested who might be experiencing or concerned about basement flooding or weeping tail surcharge. And I'm reminded by the chief building official that a building permit is required for these installations, and we look after that as part of the project.
Okay, thank you. I actually, I appreciate it that now it's actually citywide, because at one time it was only accessible to people in Thorold South. Thank you.
Just one other question, Jeff. Is it piggybacked on a regional program as well? Are they involved in this?
I don't know the history here in Thorold, but I do recall that these programs used to be funded through the regional, I can't remember the name of the flood relief program. However, I don't think private side connections are eligible under that program anymore.
Okay.
But I know that they are reviewing the criteria and with the chance that at some point in time, maybe 50% of the cost will be covered by the region of Niagara, because it impacts their facilities as well.
Exactly. Thank you. Any further questions on this report? Seeing none, PWCS 2022-39, a mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor Decker, Weeping Tile Disconnection Program. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. E. The request FE 2022-02, is that correct on yours? I'm going by here because my sheet doesn't have that on it. Is that correct? I'm going by the e-scribe.
We're looking at CC 2022-29 special event permit.
No, I'm looking at E on my e-scribe, the self-contained breathing apparatus. FE 2022-02, that's where it shows up on mine. It doesn't show up on my script, but it shows up on there. Yeah, so that's...
Sorry, they were reordered, Mr. Mayor, so yeah, we can move on to...
Can I do E?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Request for tender TFES 2022-01 SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus against mover Councillor Hanley and the seconder Councillor Decker. Does anyone want to speak to the breathing apparatus report? Councillor Kenny, go ahead.
Of course, I want to support this and get the firemen the stuff they need. My only concern would be that all the new oxygen tanks come up 1 year, $740,000. wouldn't we be better, not only in this instance, but if they had a 10 or a 20-year life expectancy, to have some come up every year instead of just 1 year being hit by an expense like this? Like, I think in all departments within the city, I think we should be spreading things out over a period of time instead of, like I say, 1 year buying all new stuff like that. So just a point, that's all.
Okay, is the chief on? Fire chief, hey? Did you want to comment on that, Chief Dixon?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a good point that Councilor Kenny brings up. Unfortunately, this is the way this one has rolled, 15-year lifetime expectancy for the SCBA packs and the bottles. But it's definitely something that maybe we can look at in the future. Unfortunately, we need to buy the amount that we do to be able to operate correctly. So to buy excess over and above that becomes a little bit more problematic. So, but it's definitely something we could definitely be thinking about.
Yeah, and I got our Director of Finance, Maria Morrow. Go ahead, Maria.
Through Mr. Mayor, just for council's information, we actually are spreading the payback over the 7-year life, so you don't take the full hit in 1 year. So there is a 7-year spreading of the expenditures.
Okay. Is there any further on that report? Okay. Again, mover Councillor Hanley, seconder Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I'm going by my e-scribe CC 2022-29 special event permit, bike to end myeloma. I had a mover Councillor Hanley and a seconder Councillor Decker. Did you want to speak to this, Councillor DeRose?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through you. I just had a couple questions for staff. First of all, I was surprised, and I just got a comment also. I was surprised this wasn't shared with the Active Transportation Committee. And I was just surprised. I don't know if there's a reason. Maybe it was time sensitive. I don't know. But so basically, are they looking? Did they give us a costing? Are they looking for any financial contribution? And secondly, are they looking for any in-kind contribution?
Staff, who wants it? Does that come from the clerks or will that come from Curtis? Curtis, do you want to speak to that?
It was from the clerk, but.
No, Curtis, do you want to speak to that, Curtis Dray?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that will be a special events permit to put on a bike event. So it does go through the clerk's department, and from the clerk's department, once council approves it, it would go to the community services department. We will work with them on the requirements. At this time, I don't believe there's any requirements for funding or in-kind services. Typically, we just simply line them up with, make sure they have their insurance, make sure that we're communicating that with the public and the messaging goes out. So at this time, I don't believe there's any requirements for funding or in-kind.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Councilor.
so thank you, Curtis. And so through you, Mr. Mayor, so tonight we're voting on that, but we're not obligated financially or in any in-kind at this point. And I still, does anybody have, like, maybe the clerk can answer this? Just wondering why this wasn't shared with the Active Transportation Committee. Because that's stuff we discussed at all our meetings. So I thought it would have been, we might have been able to add some insightful contributions to this because it's a great cause. It's a great cause.
The application goes through the special event permit, so then it comes to council, and that's the normal procedure. Am I correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, yeah. It comes through to us, and then we put it right to the next council meeting. But this is something that we could certainly flag for future type events
When
if
is your
there's time.
next meeting, Councillor Duro?
It won't be till the beginning of May, but we've got some expertise as far as the bike stuff. So that's why I thought the experienced people on our committee would be able to offer any assistance they might need. That's all. I was just trying to make it help them and benefit the citizens of Thorold.
No, because at the day this is, which I'm pretty sure is Sunday, May 15th, if you bring it up.
Oh, so it's time sensitive.
Yes,
Okay.
and so,
Yeah,
but
that's
if you bring it up at your early May meeting and let your people know that if they want to volunteer or be, to meet the group, go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge that we do recognize there's a bit of a process challenge there. So we are working internally to sort of clean that up a little bit, if you will. But that's absolutely a great suggestion to circulate this to the proper committees as well prior to. So thank you. But yes, we recognize that challenge there. So.
But
thank you.
This bike ride, they hold 3 locations across Canada, one in the west, one in the east, and the one in central Canada is going to begin and end out of Port Robinson Community Center. So I think that's pretty impressive. And it's a Sunday, May 15th. I mean, it just happened. I read it when I seen the letter come in, and I couldn't believe it because that's what my brother Michael had, multiple myeloma. So this is near and dear to my heart to see that they're going to be starting a ride out of the city of Thorold. So anyway, so special event permit, bike to end myeloma, CC 2022-29, mover Councillor Hanley, seconder Councillor Decker. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Long. Oh, did you want to speak or no? Just vote? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So next I have CC 2022-32, council correspondence. There's a bunch here that were pulled. I had Councillor Sentence up first on item 10.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So CC 2022-32, item 10, Moving Transit Forward Committee. I'd like to go ahead if I can and put Tim Whalen's name forward. I talked to him and he would like to do it. He's familiar with the file and being at the region. He'd like to be Thorold's representative on this committee. I think we get one. So I just wanted to put his name forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Councillor DeRose. Is anyone else? Councillor Longo, did you want to speak to the same report? And did you?
Yes, I did, Mr. Mayor. I just didn't know if it was an oversight and we didn't realize we had to do that. But I'll take Councillor Sentence lead there.
Okay. So Councillor Sentence on that particular item to make sure what Councillor Longo said that we're represented is that Councillor Whalen's agreed to put his name forward, so he's nominated him with the seconder, Councillor DeRose. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. I had the Councillor Neal. What did you want to pull there? Go ahead on that same report.
Yeah, it's the last item, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, more homes. I would like to have us direct that to planning staff for review of that report regarding housing and bring back a report regarding it.
Okay, we've got that. You're going to move that. Can Councillor DeRose, are you seconding that?
I'll second it after I make a comment and suggestion also towards staff.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a question. I had a question for staff. I don't know if they can answer it tonight, but
go ahead, ask.
Yeah. So reading through it, I see there's a new option for communities to raise development charges. It's called the Community Benefits Charge. It's a new tool under the Planning Act, and I just wondered, it would be great to have it explained to us in this report that Councillor Neal is asking for. But if anybody has an answer for me tonight, I'd appreciate it. I'm just wondering, I'm hoping we're considering this. I know there's probably a criteria that goes with it, and are we eligible? So that's, I just wanted to know if staff was familiar with this new benefit as of tonight, and if they can shed any light on it, or we can wait for the report.
No,
Thank you.
no, I think we can shed light on it. Maria's here. That was the change in the development charges on the way. It doesn't really give you more. It splits it up how it's divided. Am I correct, Maria, if you want to explain?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, we did discuss the community benefit charge with our consultant, and there were very strict parameters that we really didn't feel would be of benefit to us. We will review it in the context of the new legislation to see if there have been any changes, but initially it would not have been of benefit to us.
So can you, Maria, do you want bring back something?
Sure, we can include it as part of the report.
Okay, is that good, Councillor DeRose?
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. That'll be included. So we had a mover, seconder. Does anyone else want to speak to that? And Maria will include that as part of the report. All those in favor?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you need a seconder?
Yeah, Councillor DeRose is the seconder. Okay? The mover, Councillor Neal, seconder, Councillor DeRose. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Is there any further on that list? Okay, so I had a mover again, Councillor, I have a mover, Councillor Hanley, and a seconder, Councillor Decker, for the council correspondence. All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Where are we at? We got one more? Okay. CC 2022-33, feedback on housing needs in rural and northern communities. Councillor Anil, did you want to speak to that? That was your motion, and the reason that's brought forward tonight is to include that in the agenda and ask for comment tonight, or comment up to a time that we can get it put in. I'll let you speak to that, Matthew, if you want to just explain how the time constraints were, because next week we have another special meeting regarding a planning application. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the mayor, there were some time constraints in terms of getting another special meeting in. However, there is a open feedback mechanism through the website that is included in the report. So tonight we can certainly collect comments. Individual councillors can send us comments that we can submit on their behalf, or again, individuals can go, councillors or members of the public, to the website included in the report and submit their own comments there.
If they want to submit comments, would that go to you, Matthew?
If councillors would prefer, they can submit them to me, and the clerk's office will submit them on their behalf through the website by the deadline.
Okay. Well, I'll open the floor up for discussion and comment now. Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, because the second part of that, you were talking about the rural and northern communities, but the second section of that is at the city council meeting held on April 5th, council passed a motion requesting a special meeting be called to discuss the findings of the Housing Affordable Task Force report released by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And according to this, we're supposed to just send comments in, but
no, the floor's open.
All the times I've been on council since off and on since 1985, and this, from my perspective, is one of the most important things to happen, to be concerned about since I came on council. And I said my piece at the last council meeting regarding council not being part of the process, for one thing. From my perspective, very important process. And the community isn't mentioned at all in the report. And from my perspective, again, is this affordable housing? I don't think this is affordable housing. This is letting developers do 10-story buildings. And I saw on the news yesterday from Kingston that a developer is going to put a 16-story building. He's put an application in, they haven't approved it. And this particular developer has bought a number of properties along this specific street, but there's a couple of houses that are still there, and there are more houses across the street. And if they put it through, which it sounds like that going with this particular report is going to happen, is there's going to be a 16-story building next door to a single-family home. And this is the opening of the floodgates. I agree that we have to have development in 10-story buildings or 5-story buildings, but I think we have to discuss how we want to approach this. What is the process? There's no process. I mean, if this report goes through from the provincial perspective, then planning staff does all the approvals. We went through one earlier tonight that and we were allowed to speak on the different aspects of the two proposals that came forward tonight. But this report will say, council, you do not talk about it. You do not ask questions. All of that type of thing. I could go on this report, but if you haven't read the report, you need to read it because it is eye-opening. Because I asked a certain individual today to go through the report from not knowing anything about it. And he was, I mean, there's so many things in that report that is going to preclude council having any decision-making process. And I'll stop there because I did make a presentation at the last council meeting regarding having a specific meeting so that we can ask staff, specifically planning staff, some questions regarding this because already in February, we sent in a report, a 2-page report regarding this. 2 pages from planning staff replying to what the province wanted to hear. Well, you know what's going to happen is the province is going to say, we asked the municipalities and they send a reply in. Well, if the 2 or 3 page reply, which was sent in is what we have to talk about regarding this particular report. I don't know how many pages it is. And the AMO, our provincial body, hasn't even had a chance to do it because they weren't invited to the table to discuss all of these things. There's a lot of issues going on here. And I just sent for review, and a couple of councillors were talking about it, another aspect of it. And things are going to go so that council, you might as well not even be here from a housing perspective. You might as well not even be here. At least that's I mean, affordable housing. I'm involved with putting affordable housing in Thorold, and it's already come through council once, and it will be coming through again. And the Bethlehem Place people have put 3 or 4 new St. Catharines affordable housing projects in place, or are there in the process of going in place. The definition of affordable housing from their perspective is a lot different than the developer's perspective of affordable housing. So I'll stop saying anything and allow other councillors to make comment regarding this. Whether we can do anything about it, who knows? But at least we should have had a meeting already on this, because February 22nd was when the remarks were sent back into the province from our planning staff.
Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Neal wholeheartedly. I mean, we've sent things and asked letters to be sent to the province on more control. And I know this isn't against staff. I know they get frustrated with us, but it's not black and white for us. We need to have that control where we can say, sorry, that 16-story building doesn't belong there. And just common sense in our city. And again, no offense to staff. They have a job to do. This isn't on them. This is on the province. Stop trying to create intensification on cities where it shouldn't be. There are spots. That's what Councillor Neal said. But we got to do something now before it goes through. So anything that we can do or anything you need, Councillor Neal, I agree with you. Thank you.
Who else wants to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think this is a massively important topic that I don't know how we get attention. I think we should be having a special council meeting. I know there might be timing constraints, but I think we need to do something maybe other than just sending a letter. I feel like we send letters and I don't think it gets us anywhere, but this is crazy. I mean, we'll be putting up 4-story, 6, maybe even 16-story in the middle of subdivisions. And I think what's going to happen if this goes through is it's one of those, you know, it'll happen for maybe 5 to 10 years. And then the government will say, whoa, now we have all these cities that look ridiculous with random buildings throughout different developments, and they'll go back the other way. So we need to get in front of them somehow in order to stop this. So I'm not sure, maybe I missed what date we have to respond by, but is it just not possible to have a special meeting for this and maybe like a round table as council and staff to figure out how to best approach it?
We can do anything council wants. We can have a meeting. I'll let the clerk come up with some possible dates. I think we need to have people from planning there as well, not just council.
No, absolutely. Like, I think it would be great to have more of a roundtable approach.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like a typical council setting where we can all put our heads together and try to see how we can make a difference and get other municipalities in the region to come along with us.
Go ahead, Councillor Sentence. Excellent point, Councillor.
That's a great point, Mr. Mayor, through you. Strengthen numbers. So maybe Thorold going doesn't do anything, but the Niagara region is a pretty powerful group economically and growing wise. Maybe we need to have strengthened numbers. I don't know how that can be accomplished, but a round table with everybody saying enough, and maybe that gets through a little more. So just my thoughts.
Manoj, did you want to speak? Can we make a date? Or Matthew, what do we have that we can do as far as getting everyone together? It would be our group, for sure.
I mean, we can certainly look at the calendar in terms of availability, if the desire is to do that. Certainly you, Mr. Mayor, can call a special meeting if that is the desire to do so. The timeline is comments need to be in, or they close their comments by the 29th.
Yeah.
So all comments need to be written into them by that point. So that's why the recommendation from staff was individual councillors can certainly send those. I know the desire is to have the conversation. We are just unfortunately time limited in being able to collect all of that and submit it to them. So that was just sort of our direction from that perspective. But again, you can call a special if that were the desire.
Go ahead, Manon.
Through Mr. Mayor, we have a special meeting on the 26th to speak about DQ. We can add this item to the agenda as well, and we can have a roundtable and collect the thoughts. What we do is then we collect the thoughts and then present it to council on the 29th. Thank you.
Well, no, it has to be submitted by the 29th.
Through Mr. Mayor, so yes, we will collect it on the 26th as a part of our roundtable discussion. And then we'll summarize it and submit it to province before the 29th.
Councillor Neal, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option, but it's not a good one because I know that meeting is going to be long because there's a number of people going to want to speak about it, and from what I understand, it's going to take a while for all the different people that would like to speak. So that, from my perspective, is not a good evening to do that. But that's up, if council wants to go to 10, 11 o'clock at night, then so be it. I've gone past midnight on a number of occasions when previous councils have met. But for the last number of years, councils have said 10 o'clock is usually the latest because then you're dragging your feet. But I think it should be a separate meeting. And this is just from my perspective, is that I think it's so important to at least make a stand, but at least make some comments that we don't like what we see in that particular report. And the other reports, there's more than one report. This is just the one report, and the AMO is just a 6 or 7 page document.
Yeah.
there are a whole range of reports regarding this and that. So but the one issue is that they really, they probably talked to Toronto and got Toronto's perspective on it, and that's it. But I believe that we should be discussing this and take a couple hours on a round table, as Councillor Wilson mentioned, and with our planning staff, we've got some new planning staff, I believe, coming on board, is to and see what their perspective on it is. Are they willing to take the responsibility of approving all of these issues? I mean, we had a committee of adjustment meeting, and staff made some recommendations regarding it. Is that the recommendations that we want, or did we want to take a look at it and say, oh, maybe that particular recommendation isn't what we as a council want? It may be what staff wants, but it's not what council wants. Well, we won't have that to do, that's just my perspective.
Well, that's a good point, Councillor. What?
I would move we have a special meeting regarding this. I already did that once, but let's go ahead and do this again before the 29th.
So it'd have to be probably on Monday.
We can do it this week as well, Councillor, if you so choose to do that.
That's up to staff to put it together.
Well, come up with a couple of dates. I'll ask staff, and then we'll send it out to council, and we'll see how we make out. If you want to pick a date this week, and Monday might be, you wouldn't want to go past Monday because you got to put the document together. So, and Tuesday we have a special meeting regarding that other development. So I would say no later than Monday. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Neal 100% on this very important topic. Is there any way, Mr. Mayor, that we can get maybe some MPPs, invite maybe Jeff Birch, Osterhoef to join us in Zoom? Because I think we need to get these guys the message that the direction they're going is not conducive to, as Councillor Neal said, why even have a council in that regard of housing? So I agree. I'm hoping we can get some other people to join us for the meeting if possible. I know it's a tight time frame, but at least we can try. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we have so what we're going to do, I don't think we need a motion for that. We're just going to put out a couple of dates and for council to respond, and we'll see if we can get, hopefully we can get everyone, and we'll move forward. We'll get comments, we'll put them together, and we'll forward it. Okay? Does that sound good?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was CC 2022-33. Okay. I had a mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor Decker. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, into discussion reports. We did the, did we do the? PWCS 27, community yes, okay. PWCS 2022-27, community services fee schedule 2022 to 2028. I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman, our Director of Public Works and Community Services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation for this report is that council approve the community services recreation fee schedule as outlined. Thank you.
And I had a mover, Councillor Kenny, and a seconder, Councillor Neal. And questions for staff on this report? Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just through you to Curtis. You have discussed this with the community groups because it is an increase in their fees. Are they sort of knowing that this is what's going to happen? My question, of course, is do they know about it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the groups are aware of it. We've had conversations with them. There wasn't any immediate concerns with the percentages that we're proposing, so they're anticipating it.
Okay, Councillor DeRose, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess to the appropriate staff, Curtis or Jeff. So this surcharge that's being added to minor sports such as baseball and soccer, it's to build up reserves, to replenish reserves. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the surcharge for the youth sports, the $3 per use, is that the fee you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, so that fee there is to essentially to start offsetting the costs of staff. So essentially what's happening right now is the community grants, through the community grants process, they get full funding for all usage. So the $3 per head is essentially start pulling back on some of that total execution for no cost at all, so that the general taxpayers aren't subsidizing in full. Again, it's $3 per child per season.
Right, I understand that, but is this, to me, it seems like, because you mentioned that the costs, HVAC for the roof, the ice plant, the Zamboni, all these things that are for the arena. So is this an arena reserve fund?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, no, this is separate. The arena reserve fund is the $5 charge on top of the arena fees, not this fee. Okay,
just because I find it a little troubling, just because, and I know you're going to say, oh, it's only $3. I've talked to some soccer people, and here's the thing, not to have sour grapes, but Thorold Soccer Club has never received any money from the city. They do receive in kind, which is fantastic. They built their own clubhouse and field. They didn't ask for a penny of the city. And I don't know, I just feel like now the kids are being asked, and I know it's only $3, but it's the principle of it, if you ask me. And so I won't support that just for that reason, because I don't think it's fair, because what they're really paying for, if you ask me, is all these upgrades to the arena. Just in what your report, all the upgrades you listed, it's got to be around $2.5 million. And has anything been done for the soccer community in the last year, 2, 3? I don't know. I don't see a lot being done for the soccer community. I can't speak for baseball because I'm not involved. So that's just my concern, is if we're going to start having surcharges, maybe that surcharge money should go to that sport. I don't know. I don't think it's fair, and I know it's $3, but after even talking to soccer people, they weren't happy about it. It's just the principle behind it and the message. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on that, Curtis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the comments are fair. However, I would argue that council's been very generous over the last couple of years. Soccer has had a refresh to their clubhouse. The baseball folks had their diamond redone the last year and several upgrades to the baseball fields. So, but that's a fair statement.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Kenny. Oh, wait, first Maria, go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor, without really picking on any of the groups, I do want to make a comment in terms of something that we present every year at budget time, is the fees that are not collected through user fees fall on the taxpayers to fund. So that really should form part of your decision-making process. How much of the usage of these parks and these facilities should be funded strictly through taxpayers. So just offering that for your consideration.
Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councillor DeRose. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it's such an exorbitant amount for hockey, and the other ones kind of get neglected. That's all I'm saying. It's ridiculous, and that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, the hockey group pay a rental fee on the ice. The soccer and baseball groups both don't pay for the fields. we're only asking for $3 from the soccer players, and the fields are free all year. So, I mean, the kids playing hockey have to pay for the ice. I think it's
But
if
it's
I read it right,
subsidized.
it was $150.
Anyways,
But it is subsidized, Mr. Kenny. From taxpayers, it is subsidized. All minor hockey and throw it's subsidized.
all minor sports are subsidized, Counselor Giroux. Okay?
Yeah, but all I'm saying is not financially for soccer.
And
It's in kind, which is appreciated. For 2019, it was 48,836, which for 500 kids playing soccer, I think that's a great deal, and it's growing. Thank you.
And we hope it grows more, absolutely. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions, Mr. Mayor, to the appropriate staff member.
Yep.
Regarding time for floor space in our arenas. I know I brought this up a few times. The white arenas mentioned in here for dry land floor space. It was my understanding we're not going to be using the white for recreational purposes, especially in the next 2 years while we redo the operations center. So just want some clarity on that if I could.
Yeah, counts, either Jeff or Curtis, if you can comment on that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the floor essentially, once the Public Works folks move out of the facility, would potentially be available for rental. Council has not made a decision yet on the long-term use for that facility. So at this time, the intention is to potentially rent it out for dry floor space year-round.
Okay, thanks for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, my next question to staff, and it's a respectful question. I'm not sure if they have the answer, but it has to do with the Canada Game Center for dry floor space. Are we responsible? Does anybody know an answer? And if you don't, I'm fine with that. The responsibility of the city for dry floor space at the Canada Game Center, or at the Walker Sport and Ability Center.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our responsibility is for the ice allocation time at this point. The dry floor space, we did not make any commitment to offset that cost. However, I know there's an abundance of interest in that space. They're just trying to determine what the price points will actually be, and they're still reviewing the pro forma rates that were presented to council.
Thank you for that. So do we know if we have a responsibility financially for dry floor space?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not specifically to the floor space, it would come more so out of the operational cost of the facility year round versus a simple allocation to the floor. So our percentage would be to cover off the general operations in terms of the floor, but not a direct allocation for the dry floor spaces like we have for the ice.
Okay, so I guess we could take it if dry floor space that's available there isn't rented, the facility could potentially lose more money.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the pro forma, that would be a fair assumption.
Okay, thank you. And just some clarity on, we're talking about subsidizing sport in Thorold. We know it's all subsidized, but just for clarity here, for people who may be interested, the Doherty Youth Ice Partner Group would pay $147 an hour currently at Doherty. But in your report, it says that our cost for ice time in the Doherty is approximately $250. So in effect, we're subsidizing that rate to the tune of about $103 for every hour used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Based on that amount, we're subsidizing all rentals.
Yeah, that's fine. So basically, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Dre, every item of ice there, Doherty Prime Time rented to a for-profit user group, we rent that at a loss. And is that, I'll let you answer that first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so why do we do that? Is it because we need to compete with other facilities in the area, or we just lose money?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say that the answer to that is we're providing a service to the community. So we could increase the rates, but yes, we are essentially in competition across the region. So we need to be competitive and make it something that people can afford based on the size of our municipality, our general base income of the users of that group. There's a bunch of factors that go into that based on the rates. If you look at the comparisons between the municipalities, you'll notice that the municipalities in a similar size to Thorold have similar rates. And that's done strategically just based on what people can afford.
Okay, thanks for that answer. I'll just make a final comment on that. I'm not sure why any municipality would potentially rent out to a for-profit group and lose money. It doesn't make sense to me when we apparently don't have enough ice time to rent to our partner groups and our youth, but that's just my feeling on it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just threw you to Curtis. So the $3, my understanding of the $3 charge is that it's going towards workers, it's going towards upkeep, going towards other things. So that could be a soccer field, a baseball field, an arena. Its intent is to go across all spectrums to offset things. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be more specifically to baseball and soccer. We would use it for staff time, chalk for the baseball, line paint for the soccer fields, general upkeep and maintenance towards the soccer and baseball folks. Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Actually, I'll wait for a couple more reports, Mr. Mayor. I believe we're dealing with 2022, 27 right now, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'll wait for a future report coming soon.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Seeing no further questions, I had a mover, Councillor Kenny, and a seconder, Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Did you get that? There was one opposed. Okay. I'm going to turn the chair now over to Councillor Sentence for PWCS 2022-31 Ice Time Allocation Plan, as I declared a conflict on that. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is discussion report 16C, PWCS 2022-31 Ice Time Allotment Plan. And I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman, Director of Public Works and Community Services.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. The recommendation is that council approve the ice time allocation priority list as outlined in this report for the 2022-23 season.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, and a seconder, Councillor Kenny. And I'll open the floor up to any questions. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. Through you to the appropriate staff members. So the ice allocation priority list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So am I to believe that number 1, Thorold Amateur Athletic Association gets a choice whether or not they want to remain at their present location or they want to go to the new facility? Is that what this is? Do you get a choice?
Through you, Acting Mayor. So yes, in a way. However, so the process is going to be this, Councillor Hanley, that staff are going to present a schedule based on our knowledge of the rentals. There's specific features within our facility that different groups need. And one of those examples would be the figure skating group has a chair system that hangs from the rafters that they use for their events. We know certain elements like that, so we're going to be providing a schedule that accommodates and allows for these groups to essentially keep the same time frame they have at the Doherty because there's equipment existing in the facility that they need to utilize based on the rentals. And based on that, we'll move people around to the Canada Games facility versus the Doherty. The order that you're seeing in front of you is essentially to, it's a seniority list per se. So it's not first right of refusal. It's a guiding principle of if there's a dispute between groups, they'll put it in writing to staff of what the dispute is. We'll meet with them, talk to them about it. And at the end of the day, not preference, but preference will be given to the senior group in the decision-making factor of who gets what.
Okay, thank you. So could you tell me, is the Thorold Amateur Athletic Association going to be using the new facility? I want to know, like, my concern is this year, we're now involved in this multi-million-dollar facility as a Canada Games Park. But my intuition, and from what I can get from some of the user groups from talking to individuals, is that the Thorold Amateur Athletic Association doesn't want to use the facility because they can't afford it. The Thorold Figure Skating also doesn't want to use it for the same reasons, that they can't afford it. So basically, we built a facility that our own Thorold groups don't want to use, and the user groups that are left over, it looks like about 70% of them, if I read the numbers are right, that will be subsidized in, say, St. Catharines residents that used to play in the Thorold Arena, the Frank Doherty, now will be going to the Brock University facility. But yet it's a facility that the taxpayers of Thorold will be paying, but the majority of the users won't even be Thorold residents. That's the feeling I'm getting here. Because the main Thorold user groups, the Thorold Athletic Association, the Thorold Figure Skating Club, basically, I'll be honest, from what my understanding is, really don't want nothing to do with it because they can't afford it. Because they get subsidized ice in downtown Thorold.
Could I jump in, Curtis, just for a second? I've talked to both of those groups, Councillor Handley, and they intend fully on to use the new facility. They understand that there's going to be bumps along the way, that, practice is practice and ice is ice, and they will be going up there. And my understanding is that we're going to be having the same system at the Doherty as we are going to be having up there for them, but they are fully understanding and want, I won't say want, but are willing and able to go up there. You're muted, Councillor Handley. Councillor Handley, you're muted. You're muted.
I appreciate your answer to that question and stuff. What I'm wanting was, I asked Mr. Gray, but do we get confirmation? Because I'm getting mixed reports here myself as a counselor as to what they want, and I'm getting mixed feeling. You stating that you've talked to them.
Just today I talked to them.
Users amongst them, they tell me another feeling, and I know that it did come before council when we brought this proposal forward that they wanted to use it, but I don't see any guarantee that they're going to use it. We got a facility that we're opening, and to this day, we still do not even know who's going to use it. Do we have a list of who's actually going to use it? Confirmed list?
I talked to the leaders of both groups today.
I'm not asking you, Mr. Sentence, I'm asking Curtis Gray.
Okay, Curtis, go ahead.
Please. Do we have users or groups that are committed to going to use the new facility, and can we get that in a form of report? Which ones are going to actually use the facility? I need to know, because as a taxpayer, I'm yet to figure out the hours that we're going to be responsible for there and the cost implication it's going to be to the taxpayers. But we've had no answers yet in over 2 years. So now we're getting close. The facility's sitting there built, and I'm getting the feeling we still don't have any answers. So what user groups are confirmed that will be using the new facility? Mr. Dre, please.
Okay, through you, Acting Mayor, I think the director would like to speak to that, so I'll pass to him.
Okay.
Yes. If I can, Acting Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Handley. This is the $5 million question for us. The facility is not open, and so people don't know what they don't know. And once they have a chance to opt to get in and walk around and have a look and speak with the operator and negotiate those terms, I'm certain that you'll see the use allocation change. The challenge we have now is we don't know who needs to go in, and the purpose of this report is to simply to develop a decision tool that allocates a priority to those groups. If they want to go there, then that's fine. And if they don't, then that's fine as well. It helps us to shift the user groups to those areas where the ice time is available. And yes, it's going to be a work in progress, and we don't have experience with the facility to say that people are going to want to book practices, games, tournaments, or just exactly how they might use that facility. That's going to take some time. And I think it's very difficult, and we've told you this from the beginning, it's very difficult to predict what the utilization is going to be, particularly in the first year. I think we'll be able to sort these things through. And you'll find that those groups that traditionally wanted to be at Doherty might prefer to be at the Walker Sport and Ability Center. So I appreciate the fact that you want to have confirmation, but we're still not there. And we won't be there until we can develop a schedule that people not just want to have the time, but are prepared to pay for that time at those facilities.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up. Say, just hypothetically, nobody wants to use the new facility. What's the plan? Is the plan then that the city will choose who goes without an option? Because obviously, we're gonna need ice space. So if you give everybody the question or the opportunity, do you wanna go or you don't wanna go? Hypothetically, if everybody says no, what do we do?
Well, I don't ever, Mr. Acting Mayor, I don't think that would ever be the case. We had 2 arenas. We still need 2 arenas. We're going to use the ice that's available to us and allocate those spaces to those user groups that want to be there. And if it turns out that that's not the case, then we'll have to bring a report back to council and talk about reducing ice rental rates further in order to encourage utilization.
I thank you very much. I appreciate it, because that's my concern, that users will go to other municipalities where the rates are fair, maybe cheaper, and where they have access to lockers and offices and whatnot, you know, possibly. So I appreciate that answer. That no questions further at this time, then, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Hanley. Any other questions? Councilor Longo.
Thank you. Through the acting mayor to staff members or any councillor that may wish to answer. And maybe you, Councillor Sens, because you did say something that you've spoken to the user groups, and it sounds like they're prepared to use the new facility and something would be worked out. What exactly, how would it work for them in terms of financial implications?
Well, I'll ask Curtis Stray to pipe in here, but my understanding is that we would, if like we were subsidizing in the old arena, we would be subsidizing up there or the Doherty Arena, and we would make it as accessible as possible for them to be up there as well. If I'm mistaken, Curtis can correct me, but we are looking to make it as seamless as we can for figure skating and hockey. And for clarity, I didn't talk with the president of the Hockey Association. I talked with Kathy Dietrich and the president of the Figure Skating Association. So I'll ask Curtis Stray if he, or Jeff, if they want to clarify on that.
Yeah, through you, Acting Mayor. I would say that allow us to come back with an updated policy, which we're working on in the background right now, which will clarify a path forward, if you will. That's done in conjunction with the user groups, the key user groups, all the user groups, and we'll present it to council at a later date.
Okay, fair enough. Just my feelings.
I appreciate getting that at a later date, but I'm concerned because I'm even more concerned after hearing what's been said. It sounds to me like the pro forma rate of, I believe, $200 an hour at the Walker Sport and Ability Complex will now need to be subsidized down to the youth partner group rate of $147. So we're asking the community to further subsidize a rental rate at a building that we lease. This ice is getting extremely expensive there for people who actually don't use ice, which is the general taxpayer. So I'm not sure if we're making promises to these groups, because that's never been discussed at a council meeting, that we were going to subsidize their ice time. They knew what it was going in when they came and said they wanted us to build this facility.
Yeah, just my feelings, Councillor Longo, just my spitballing on the subject. And my thoughts were that we subsidize in the old arena, the white arena, and that potentially we could do it up there. But I'm not finalizing anything right now on just my thoughts.
I'll disagree with that assessment, because we can subsidize in something we own and operate, but this facility we don't own. We pay operational losses. We pay for capital renewal or a condo fee, and we pay a rental rate. Our hourly ice rate is enormous at that place when you factor all that in. And to subsidize it even further isn't fair for the general taxpayer.
That's fair enough. It could be a discussion later, but yeah, I see
I
what
want
you're
to
saying.
discuss it tonight, because, with all due respect,
Okay.
Acting Mayor, because we've never really had an opportunity to discuss this, and I don't want to kick it down the road. So if there's some questions that can finally be answered tonight, and I'm trying to ask respectful questions in a respectful way, I think we should talk about it.
Certainly. Any other questions?
Yes, I do. I'm just wondering, and I know it's early, but it sounds to me like the majority of people, for financial reasons, would continue to use Doherty. That I think we could safely agree on, I think. I'm just wondering what we anticipate, how many hours we will actually rent for Thorold user groups at the Walker Sport and Ability Center. Does anybody have an idea on what that number would be annually? Like, what would our ice time rental be for the facility?
Acting Mayor, if I can just kind of refocus, and I understand the question, and I understand that why we need to have the answer there. But until we finalize a schedule, we won't know what groups will decide to move to our facility up here, or whether they stay at Doherty. The report is recommending that we adopt this priority ranking, and that's really what we need to get direction on. And as Mr. Dre had mentioned, we'll come back with a schedule to say, here's the new schedule that we've went to the user groups. This is where people are going to be and how much they're going to pay. And it will be easier for us, I think, and council to understand just exactly how the user groups have shifted to use the new facility and which ones decided to stay. They can't all stay. Some are going to have to move, and some are going to have to make adjustments about how their programs are being offered. Some of it might have to be split between the two facilities. So we won't know that until the schedule is confirmed and what the utilization is going to be. So I understand that we need to answer that question, but the report in front of us is really talking about, is this the right criteria to use when we start to allocate ice time amongst the user groups?
That's fair enough. I appreciate that. Could we get a ballpark on when you'll come back with a further report so we can ask more questions that honestly people are still asking me and I still don't have the answers to?
Through you, Acting Mayor, yes, typically we like to try and finalize the ice time contracts in June or July, Curtis. So we could have something back for the July meeting, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Longo?
Many, but not tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hanley?
You, Acting Mayor. Well, I'm just thinking here then, that if we have a priority schedule here, and we're gonna go out and talk to our user groups about usage and where that usage may occur at, then we must know how many hours per week we're responsible for at the new facility. Because if we don't know how many hours we're responsible for or what we're looking to allocate, how can we go forward to the user groups and ask them or allocate ice times if we're at a position where we don't even know how many hours a week we're going to be using at the new facility? Or do we know how many hours a week we're going to be responsible for? I'd like to know so I can do some mathematical figures as per the agreement we have with the partnerships. You know, I hope you're understanding of that. Like, you know, there are many questions we ask, and that's one. And, you know, it's been over 2 years, so we're going to go into contract negotiations or negotiations with user groups on what ice time they'd like to have or the allocation of ice time. So on that note, we must know how many hours we're responsible for, as I said, or don't we? We still don't know how many hours we're responsible for as far as ice time goes?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Through your acting mayor, yes, that's all set out in the pro forma, Councillor Handley. But we don't know who's going to be where until council agrees on how the ice time prioritization will be allocated. And that's what we're asking you to do tonight. Once we have this, we'll sit down with the user groups, we'll figure out who goes where, and we'll be able to determine, is there surplus ice? Do we need more ice? How that's all going to be dealt with.
So thank you very much. And so then if I go back to the pro forma, it'll be in there how many hours we're responsible for each day? Or is it just say prime time hours?
Yes, you're acting mayor, but there's a difference between allocating time and actually booking time.
Yeah, so we're responsible for time. See, to me, we're going to be responsible for time. And if we don't rent that time out, the taxpayer eats it.
Unless the operator can resell that ice to another entity to avoid us having to eat that cost.
You're muted, Councillor Hanley.
Don't know where we're at.
Sorry. You say that again, you were muted.
So obviously, as of today, we still do not know where we're at. We're getting into pretty soon, you know, we don't know when the place is going to open. It's just concerning to me. That's all. I got no more further questions at this time. I guess we'll just wait and see what's down the pipe.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we had a mover, Councillor DeRose, seconder, Councillor Kenny. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Mr. Mayor, I bring it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. And now we'll move on to PWCS 2022-34, Lakeview Cemetery Service Delivery Review Implementation Plan. And I'll turn this over to our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation for this report is one, that council direct staff to implement a transition plan to migrate the operation of the Lakeview Cemetery to a net zero operating expense model over the next 5 years. That's 2022 to 2027. Two, that council approve the rate adjustment plan as presented in Appendix 3, effective September 6, 2022, with annual increases implemented on each anniversary date over the next 5 years. Three, that funding for the rental and installation of temporary washroom facilities at the Lakeview Cemetery in the amount of $4,400 plus HST be reallocated from the parks operating budget to the cemetery operating budget. Four, that Raimondo and Associates Architects be engaged to update the Lakeview Cemetery redevelopment concept plan at an upset limit cost of $37,900, HST excluded, using funding approved for this purpose in the 2020 capital budget. Number five, that staff be authorized to negotiate the terms of a new agreement with the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority regarding the lands being held in reserve in the new section of the Lakeview Cemetery. And 6, that the technical, financial, and operating reviews identified in the cemetery service delivery review be included in the capital and operating budget forecast. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I had a mover, where am I here? Mover, Councillor Longo, seconder, Councillor Wilson, and now I open the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Durrell.
For you, Mr. Mayor. I would assume that Thorold residents and taxpayers pretty well paid for all the expenses to have the benefit of having, you know, it's not that it's ever a nice place, but a respectable place where our family can be buried. I just have, and Jeff, I'm good with your whole report. The only thing I have a problem with is so of course, but when we start, the adult grave goes up 30% this year and 30% next year for a Thorold resident, where I know non-residents are already paying more, and theirs only goes up 20%. I'll give you just one more example. This is why I won't support this. Resident disinterment, okay? Okay, so digging up a body just for whatever reason. Maybe you wanted it moved or for Thorold residents. Non-resident, and I don't understand why non-residents should be getting all this extra money that's necessary should be coming from non-residents. Why should people that are paying their taxes already to keep the cemetery afloat, why should they incur an additional expense upon death? That's some feedback. I know it's because the fees are lower anyway, but once again, why are we subsidizing people from out of town when they don't pay taxes to Thorold?
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I think the question is related to the increase in rates and where we're starting from and where we need to go to. And the out-of-town users already are paying more than the locals. If you increase that number way too much, then obviously people won't come here. So you can't count on that revenue. It has to be increased in a way that shoots for at least the regional average or what other municipalities are charging. Very similar conversation about other user fees that we've had tonight. And what the cemetery service delivery review does is it identifies that we are shortchanging ourselves, not only on the operating side, but on the capital side, to the point where existing taxpayers are paying a disproportionate amount for specialized services that individuals might request at the cemetery. And the objective here is to get to the point where the revenues help to offset our operating costs, to reduce the amount of subsidy that's hitting our tax bill. We may not get there right away because in order to generate revenue, we're going to have to make some capital investments for services like columbaria, like mausoleums, to help promote the sale. And at the moment, we don't have a lot of inventory for pre-need sales, which reduces our ability to generate revenue and offset our operating costs. So it's kind of complex, but where we are now is not in a good position, and it's not sustainable over the long run. And so that's why you'll see the recommendations that are included in the report not only deal with, how can we deal with the short-term situation, but also the long-term situation, and identify what are these costs for the future capital investments that we need to make? And how can we optimize the existing inventory that we have? So it's a long, I apologize for the long answer, Councillor DeRose, but the short answer is simply, we're not charging enough. Our taxpayers are paying a disproportionate amount. We need to get back to some sense of what the regional average is. And we won't be able to do it in 1 year, so we're recommending that it's be spread out over 5.
Any further?
No, I appreciate your answer, Jeff, and it's everything you're saying I agree with. I just think it's kind of punishing Thorold residents. Like, why don't we take this approach of net zero to the ice time? That's what I don't understand. We're taking it to when people need it the most, dealing with a death in the family. And I just think it's kind of punishing the Thorold taxpayers and if we're trying to recruit, why are we expanding the mausoleum? You were saying that we're trying to, we want to open the door to other communities to bury their people in Thorold. That's great. But remember, we have to expand now, and that's going to cost taxpayers an arm and a leg. So that's all. I just wanted to make that point. But no, your answer was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny.
I'm going to support this. I did take the time to call Jeff earlier in the week. I did have one concern, and it's still a concern of mine. We don't have an office there at the cemetery. We don't have anybody in the office. When we have family members pass away, I don't know if a sign on the door to call a certain number is. I would like a discussion from hear from other councillors how they feel. I don't think that a sign on the door with a phone number to call and set up an appointment is the way to go. I think we should somehow, if we have to, increase taxes or whatever, or charge more per plot. But we should have somebody at the cemetery so that when we have a death in the family and somebody goes there, there's somebody there. You could have somebody drive into the cemetery looking for a plot and not knowing where it is, and they've driven out there and they can't find it. We need somebody there to tell them where to go. I mean, it's a public service. We need somebody to help these people at their worst point of their life. So I would just like other councillors to hear from them and think and let staff know if we need somebody there Monday to Friday during the week.
Thank you, Councillor Neal.
I agree with Councillor Kenny. And we all have relatives and parents that are out there. And when we do have a death in the family, it's nice to have somebody out at the cemetery to allay our concerns, to give us the information necessary. And if we have to look for a relative in the cemetery that we don't know where they are, it's nice to have somebody at the cemetery in order to do that. And we've always, as long as I know, somebody out there. And that's, so I don't know how we do that, whether we do just somebody in part of the building that isn't condemned at the moment. I don't know how to do that, but I think we need somebody out there in order to answer questions.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley.
I agree too, 100%. Councillor Kenny made a good point there. It's a public service. It'd almost be like, could you imagine if there was a sign on the door at City Hall? Call this number. We're not available right now. After you've gone there, not knowing, when people say, well, you can see it on the internet or what have you, to find the information when the office is open or closed. But I think it's a personable service. We need someone on hand. Mausoleum, be it, like points were already made, finding plots, just a general service, and in general, you know, it's a public service. And if we'd done it with other entities, you know, I couldn't see it happen. It'd be like having the arena closed and you knock on the door and we'll come and let you in. So I believe that it's something that's needed, and I believe we should have the staff. I just look at all the additional staff members we put on here at the city and all these jobs that we vote for, $100,000 jobs usually, always 6 digits plus, 80, 90,000. This is a job run by a city employee. You know, the expense isn't there. I believe that's astronomical to man it. And I believe we have an obligation to the taxpayers to man it and have someone on site. I believe most municipalities probably do have an on-site person at the cemetery. And, you know, that's my thought. I can't see having nobody out there with a note in the door. It doesn't work for me either. So I concur with Councillor Neal and Councillor Kenny said.
Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, I through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree as well. I think it's part of the presentation out there and having somebody in your time of need, if it's a trailer even, that temporarily while they are doing construction. So I'll support this, but I would like to see representation out there from the city when people need it, if we can do that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Staff want to comment on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, understand it as being a reduction in the level of service. During COVID, we've operated by appointment only, and now that we're returning back, I can understand the perspective as being a reduction in the level of service. We can provide a trailer out there to temporarily do administrative space for that type of thing. We can't store a lot of records out there. So a lot of the work, even though we might have some discussions out there, will have to be coordinated with the files that we have had to move out of the administrative building. So we can work it out. The cost of the trailer is around $6,000 to rent it annually, to have something there. And as I say, in the new design, there will be office and some type of amenity space for conducting sales or other business, cemetery business in that facility. But in the short term, in the meantime, I'm going to ask if it's okay to ask Curtis to explain what staff we have out there on a daily basis and what capabilities they have with respect to helping people find loved ones.
Okay, Curtis, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So currently the process is we do have staff out there on a daily basis, including the weekends. So the staff that are out there Monday to Friday are aware of the plot locations, agreed that there isn't necessarily an office facility for them to go into based on the one being closed. But the staff are in place, are knowledgeable, they can answer the questions, they can be helpful. And they also have direct access to the supervisor and the administration team who have free autonomy to go to the cemetery as they feel needed to service the residents. So it is a reduction in service as we don't have a body there, but I can also offer the information that the administrative team needs to support each other right now. We've had some turnover there. And the learning curve is substantial, as you can imagine, being cemeteries. So we're trying to put redundancies in place. So if somebody's on vacation, they have somebody backing them up that's knowledgeable. We're building the system that'll work in a long-term capacity. And as Mr. Holman mentioned, that we will be having an office space out there in some capacity once the construction to the new mausoleum is finished. That's the intention, so that business can be conducted out there. And ultimately, we're working on a strategy of where we want to go with the cemetery. So whether it's additional staffing resources, whether it's sales, whether it's direct oversight, that's part of this process that we need to determine over the next couple of years and where we want to go. So in the short term, we do have staff out there daily. Frankly, that in another couple of weeks, there's staff there till 11 o'clock at night, potentially, if somebody wants to come out and they have questions. We can send staff out there to service people.
Go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Yeah, is everything computerized now, or are you in the process of computerizing all the records?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are moving everything to the Stone Orchard system. We have done that digitalization contract with a firm that's coming in, I believe, next month. And over the course of the summer, all of the records will be digitalized and then input into the system electronically.
So you don't need to bring the records back out there, so you don't need a bigger building to house all the records that we have had.
Mr. Mayor, that is the intention in the future, yes. Currently, we have a fair number of files that need to be stored in a secure location. So, but the intention is that we will move away from hard copies, yes.
Very good, thank you.
I need a mover and a seconder to go past 10 o'clock. We won't be much past 10, but we're going to be a little past 10. Mover, Councillor Sutton, seconder, Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. So is there any other speakers to this report? Is there anything you want added? Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, I'm just one final thought. I'm not looking for somebody just to go out there and sit around and whatever. I just want somebody available that if somebody were to come, I know I've said it, were to come and ask for information, that somebody's right there to give that information, and them not have to drive around the cemetery looking for somebody working. That's all. Thank you.
Curtis, how can we accommodate that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, let me look at different options there. Off the top of my head, we can provide a phone number directly to the supervisor who can ask staff to go to the office. There's simple ways to accommodate that, which we can absolutely implement pretty quickly.
Okay. Are you good with that, Councillor not Councillor Hanley, Councillor Longo? Councillor Kenny. My mistake, sorry. You're good with that? Where is he? Okay.
I understand what everybody's saying here. I mean, time will tell. Okay, I know we have to do our best, but I just know that I knew somebody that had an issue a couple months ago when somebody passed away in a family, and they called and said they didn't like the way the process was working, so I figured I'd bring it up.
No, that's good.
Like I say, time will tell.
So we're going to approve this implementation plan with Curtis looking at some options on how to improve that. Curtis, is that correct? And we'll monitor it, and if there's something that we need, we'll come back to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, is everybody good with that? Okay, so at a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson. PWCS 2022-34 Lakeview Cemetery Service Delivery Review Plan, Implementation Plan. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, are there any notices of motion? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Mayor, it's 2 minutes to 10.
I already did that. We already.
Oh, sorry, I lost internet connection.
Yeah.
I apologize. I do have to leave at 10.
We're going to be done. All we have to do the bylaws. Okay? Is there, okay? We're good there? Okay, bylaws. First reading of the bylaw, Bylaw 41-2022. I have a mover, Councillor Longo, and a seconder, Councillor Hanley, that leave be given to introduce Bylaw 41-2022, and the same now be read a first time. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mover, Councillor Longo, seconded, Councillor Hanley, that the bylaw just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass. and do pass, and what's the last line I want to read there? All the, I don't have it in front of me, any notion to the contrary now?
It's just confirming the mover and seconder.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Confirming bylaw. Bylaw 25-2022. Bylaw to adapt, ratify, and confirm the actions of City Council at the meeting held on April 19th, 2022, and that the same now be read a first time. At a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor DeRose. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Final reading of the bylaw. Mover, Councillor Sentence, seconder, Councillor Rose. That the bylaw just read a first time, be read a second and third time, and do pass. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Adjournment. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor not Decker, because she's not on, Councillor Kenny. That this meeting is hereby adjourned at 10 p.m. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone, and we'll send out some information on a possible couple of